Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching What If Naruto helped Hinata after she was banished from her clan. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
It was practically the ideal day for cloud watching because the clouds were just a little bit overcast as they passed over the Hidden Leaf village. People were going about their daily lives as usual, including working, shopping, and so forth. Shinobi were moving back and forth, taking in the day's rather generic atmosphere. Despite continuing to monitor the village for potential threats, even the Anbu appeared to be a little more at ease. Mission requests from the ninja were rather slow, primarily because those who would typically be making them wanted to take their time with the recently appointed Godem Hokage, the Slug Princess of Konoha, and Densetsu no Sanin member Tsunade Senju. The newly appointed Hokage was not particularly distrusted by foreign dignitaries and daimyo, but it was customary to try to avoid overloading a new cage with missions unless they were absolutely necessary, like threatening to overthrow a leader or apprehend a high-ranking criminal. But the attitude was a little different inside the Hyuga compound. Today was one Hinata Hyuga's second spar day. The Hyuga had been growing increasingly dissatisfied with Hinata's performance as heir ever since she had lost the chance to be promoted during the Chunin exams about a month and a half earlier. They were so dissatisfied with Hinata's failure to live up to her role as the clan's heiress that they were considering having her younger sister, Hanabi, take her place. In addition to not making Chunin, Hinata lost to her cousin Neji, a prodigy who belonged to the clan's branch house. According to Hiashi's standards and those of the Hyuga family council, a group of elders who assisted Hiashi in managing the family, that was unacceptable. She had to be the best in the Juken, or gentle fist, fighting style because she was an heiress. It was a disgrace to the main house that she lost to Neji. If nothing else, she ought to have used Neji to clean the floor or, at the very least, the cage bird seal to preserve her reputation in addition to her regular training with her team and her village missions. Hinata had been subjected to a demanding and taxing training regimen for the past month and a half. At the moment, she was engaged in combat with a branch house member of a similar age. Hanabi was in another area of the house working on her academy coursework with her private tutor while her cousin was at a mandatory training session with his sensei. The Hyuga elders, 4 men and 4 women, Hinata's father Hiashi Hyuga, the clan's current head, and a few branch house members made up her audience. By her very nature, Hinata had no desire to harm those she loved. She didn't want to permanently harm someone she cared about, which is one of the reasons she performed so poorly in spars against friends and family. The deadly fighting style of the Juken was well known for leaving little evidence for an autopsy. Internal organs could sustain major damage from a single, well-placed blow. Hinata typically hesitated and fought defensively in any of her spars because she was afraid of hurting a friend or family member in that way. That attitude would cost her dearly today. It had been easy for the spar to stare out the branch house member she was sparring with lacked Neji's level of skill. The first part of the match was relaxed, only a few hits here and there were heard, and the crowd didn't speak until the match was over so they could offer feedback. Since Hinata was able to block off several tenketsu in her opponent's body, she had the advantage thus far. She did, however, eventually expose herself to a blow to the heart, which would have ended the bout. When she saw this, she whirled to try to take the blow to the back in an effort to lessen the damage and prevent a fatal blow. Unfortunately, her opponent pumped too much chakra into the strike. Just as it was about to happen, the branch member tried to remember the strike as Hinata spun to avoid it, but it was too late. Instead of cutting off the chakra flow to his hand, Hinata's opponent accidentally created a pulse in his palm instead of recalling it and sent the pulse into Hinata's back, right in between her shoulder blades. That strange incident did something that nobody in the room anticipated. Hinata was instantly on her stomach, writhing on the ground in excruciating pain and screaming her throat raw. She was sparring. Then there was a pulse from a poor Juken strike, and then this pain. She had no idea what was happening. She was afraid of what was happening. Even a deadly or damaging gentle fist blow to the back wasn't meant to hurt this much. She just lay on the floor, clinging to her sides. All the onlookers were doing was trying to understand what was happening. Hiashi was unable to discern what was happening as the medics were getting ready to enter. 2 moving lumps appeared close to Hinata's back, just as a number of people were about to activate their Byakugan. 2 distinct masses appeared to be attempting to flee backward. The clan's failure left everyone stunned and unsure of what was happening. No one had to wait long because Hinata's coat ripped open in the back, revealing a pair of wings, just as everyone was beginning to wonder what was happening. Each one was about 5 feet long, covered in soft feathers that would silently fly through the air like a human-sized owl, and pure white with the faintest lavender tint tinting the wings to give them an even softer appearance. Everyone watched in disbelief. Nobody in the vicinity of the arena knew what was happening. In other words, everyone but Hiashi, who wore the stone-like exterior characteristic of a Hyuga and entered the arena where his daughter lay with a look of surprise, fear, and pure hatred on his face. Hinata started to lift her head to see what was happening. She didn't like how quiet it was, and she was a little anxious about what was happening. She saw feathers as she tried to open her eyes, which she had apparently closed at one point. Why are these in this place? She delicately touched one and was startled to discover that she could feel something emanating from her back and that the feather was fastened to a wing. What's happening here? She desperately tried to get her thoughts to catch up with what was happening, but Hiashi was on her before she could. Hiashi brought his oldest daughter up to eye level by grabbing her by the throat with his left hand. Hiashi said in a tone that was as icy as ice and as scorching as fire, "I do not know what kind of abomination you are trying to pass yourself off as, but I will not stand for it. Clearly, you are not human, and you are certainly no daughter of mine anymore." Hinata tried to say, "BB but, Oto-san," but she was choking and finding it hard. But after her father had dropped her to the ground, Hiashi silenced her with a slap to the face before she could continue to scream and beg for his forgiveness. Hinata was about to cry as she gazed into the face of the man she referred to as her father. "I already told you, you are no daughter of mine. A daughter of mine would not be a freak of nature. It is clear that you are no Hyuga. You are nothing more than a mistake of nature. A monstrosity that was attempting to pass yourself off as human." Hiashi then spoke with Hinata. "As of right now, you are no longer a member of this clan. You are stripped of your title as heiress. You are not even worthy of bearing the name of Hyuga. You are no longer welcome among our clansmen and will be given 5 minutes to leave this compound, or you will be executed now. Get out of my sight, wretch." Now terrified, bewildered, and in excruciating physical and mental pain, Hinata did the only thing she could under the circumstances. She fled the compound as quickly as she could. Without even trying to look back or gather any personal belongings, she no longer was welcome and was now alone in the world. Not fully understanding that things would get worse before they got better, she dashed out into the early afternoon streets. After returning from a C-rank mission to deliver some reports to a nearby town, Team 7 just arrived at Konoha's gates. Kakashi was still deep in concentration on one of the small Icha books he always had with him. Naruto was trying to decide what to do when he got home that day. Sakura was still attempting to get a date with Sasuke while telling him that he was a fool for the 16th time that day. Naruto actually kept track, and Sasuke Uchiha was as talkative as usual. Then Naruto sighed deeply. The mission had been rather dull. It was extremely dull to listen to middle-aged men discuss topics like economics and the local news that was included in the report. Not even a haphazard bunch of bandits to hunt down existed. Because it was outside the village, the mission was actually a D rank disguised as a C rank. On the way there and back, his team didn't even try to train. Naruto turned to face his group. Lately, he had been noticing things about them that he either didn't pay attention to earlier or was ignoring up until now. He had observed, for example, that although it appeared that Kakashi was favoring Sasuke by training him exclusively, the main reason he trained Sasuke was because Sasuke possessed the Sharingan more than anything else. In addition, Kakashi had repeatedly emphasized to Sasuke the value of cooperation and friendship, which he explained to Sakura and Naruto soon after the exams. This was the reason he took Sasuke away for a month between the exams and the finals. At least Kakashi didn't seem to want to abandon them, even though Naruto could tell there was more to it than that. Naruto also started to view Sasuke in a slightly different light. Sasuke had been a bastard before he was cursed. He had a problem with anger and was now a bastard. Sasuke appeared to have a short fuse as a result of whatever his brother Itachi did to him when Itachi and Kisame attempted to kidnap Naruto. From sparring to training routines to even outperforming one another in jutsu, Naruto and Sasuke were constantly competing these days. Naruto was starting to realize that Sasuke was not just being competitive, rather, he was attempting to prove something to someone. Sasuke always believed that he was superior to everyone else, so Naruto was perplexed. What would Sasuke need to prove to anyone, let alone his teammates? At last, Sakura appeared. Naruto believed he might have an opportunity to prove to Sakura how valuable he was after bringing back Tsunade to help Sasuke awaken from his coma. But Naruto realized that any chance he had with Sakura was long gone after witnessing her response to Sasuke regaining consciousness. Even though it hurt to acknowledge it, Sasuke would always possess the one thing Naruto would never have: Sakura's love. Sakura would always consider Naruto to be nothing more than a nuisance, regardless of his accomplishments, strength, or ninja journey. Naruto was hurt, but he understood that it might be for the best ultimately. A lot of people had been urging him to move on from her for years, so would it really be that horrible if he did? In addition, it would be pleasant to at least have a friend who didn't beat you up for disparaging her crush. In any case, It would be pleasant if a girl would talk to him without insulting him in any way. Though he felt it would be strange to ask a girl who wasn't his own age for a date, Naruto started to consider some of the other girls in his rather small social circle. However, none of them seemed like good candidates to approach about becoming a girlfriend. As Naruto recalled, Tenten was Neji's teammate, possessed flawless accuracy, and took his role as a ninja very seriously. She would also be grateful that he had returned to the village with her idol, Tsunade. She was decent, and a little more attractive than Sakura, but it's likely that she wouldn't feel at ease with someone who had beaten her teammate as severely as Naruto had. In addition, she did appear to be more focused on her career than a romantic partner. Ino was undoubtedly out. She was another Sasuke fangirl despite being attractive. The likelihood was that if the chance to be with Sasuke ever changed, he would simply be pushed aside in that manner. Although dating someone from a different village was typically frowned upon, there was that one girl from Tsunade, Tamari. Furthermore, someone who could beat you up with a giant fan or who had brothers who could kill you without leaving a body behind intimidated him a little. Naruto and the other members of Team 7 heard what sounded like a mob on the next street over before he had time to think things through. Naruto was somewhat intrigued by this and a little uneasy about it. When Kakashi realized this, he sighed inwardly. Naruto's early years weren't particularly enjoyable. Even though he had never been the target of an assassination attempt, it didn't matter when you spent the first 8 years of your life being randomly mobbed. Kakashi would know, as he was part of Naruto's protective Enbu detail along with Itachi Uchiha before he became a missing nin, Hyuga Uzuki, and a man named Yamato, who was then codenamed Tenzo. Kakashi ended up saving Naruto from quite a few of these mobs. Because of this, he was aware that Naruto was a little uneasy in front of big crowds of villagers. Even so, he thought it strange that a mob in the town would not be pursuing Naruto. For once Kakashi noticed that his blonde student was interested in what was happening since Sakura wanted to try to get Sasuke on a date after the mission was over and Sasuke appeared to be attempting to figure out what Naruto's issue was. She appeared irritated that they had stopped instead of ignoring the situation. Kakashi made the decision to allow Naruto to do what he felt was necessary. "Oi, Naruto," Naruto said. "Yeah, Kakashi-sensei?" Naruto nodded slightly, but his curiosity outweighed his fear. "I take it you were worried about what that mob is for, right?" Naruto asked. Sasuke's face took on a smug expression. Sasuke said angrily, "What's the matter, Dobi? Are you afraid of a few civilians?" "Shut it, Teme. You know how I feel about large groups." Naruto was struck in the head by a fist. "Shut up, Naruto Baka. Just because you can't be man enough to face a few civilians like Sasuke-kun, doesn't mean you have to hold us up." Her inner voice seemed to concur. "Shanaru. Yeah, Baka. You're stealing our time with Sasuke-kun. Stop acting like a sissy and let's finish this mission right away." Kakashi stepped in before things became unmanageable. "I have a solution, Naruto. How about you go over and try to figure out what's going on? The rest of us will go ahead and deliver our report. This was a pretty easy mission, so I think we will be fine if you aren't there this time." Kakashi then turned his eye in an upside downward form after expressing gratitude to his sensei. Naruto dashed in the direction of the mob's sound. "Kakashi-sensei, are you sure you want that Baka going off to find out what's going on? Knowing him, he probably would just get beaten to a pulp or something, and he would probably just end up making things worse by being the usual Baka that he is," Sakura yelled. The remainder of Team 7 then departed to report to the Hokage, saying, "I trust his judgment. Sakura, he has his own reasons for doing this now. The rest of us have a mission to complete." Naruto was aware from personal experience that Konoha residents didn't simply congregate in a mob for no apparent reason. He was attacked by a mob multiple times when he was younger. Naruto would be slashed, beaten, and subjected to a number of other unpleasant memories. Randomly mobbing him when he wasn't present for the beating wasn't their style. Instead, they tried to hunt the fox, or exterminate the demon. He began to consider the precise target of their attack. It wasn't exactly a status that most people boasted about, and Naruto wasn't sure that someone would just walk into Konoha and allow themselves to be beaten up by a random bunch of people. He didn't think it would be another demon container like him. From Naruto's perspective, that left little else. The majority of people in Konoha were accepting of those who didn't look like the majority because there were enough odd-looking people there. Naruto had little room for imagination after that. The blonde genin became enraged as Naruto turned the corner and saw a group of maybe 10 or 12 people beating someone or something up while a group of about 20 or 30 people surrounded them and yelled things like, "Monster," "Freak," and "Kami's mistake." His younger self was in the midst of that beating, and he was essentially gazing into a portal of the past. He already didn't care, and he had no idea what they were attacking. Not to mention that there is still no Anbu or other ninja in the area to put an end to this mess, Naruto reflected. I suppose I will have to stop this myself. Naruto became more determined, and he created roughly 50 shadow clones to attack the crowd and attempt to dissuade them from whatever was capturing their attention. Fortunately, he had been identified as the Kyuubi brat by the crowd in the past. They may have wanted to beat him, but since he was a ninja and could create hundreds of copies of himself, they chose to flee rather than risk being beaten by Konoha's most knucklehead ninja. Naruto arrived at the scene as soon as the crowd dispersed and saw what looked to be a girl lying face down on the street, covered in blood and bruises. The fact that this girl had 2 wings sprouting from her back caught Naruto's attention right away. Wait, wings? Naruto pondered. That was undoubtedly unusual, and it would likely account for the mob's attack on her. People often behave violently toward things they don't comprehend. They had white wings that seemed to have a lavender tint to them. When he began to notice some rather familiar aspects of the girl, he made an effort to get a better look. First of all, she was dressed in the remnants of a woman's beige or tan jacket that had what looked like a symbol of a red flame on it. She had bluish-black hair and looked about his age, or at least his size, since there weren't many people around and the street was still one of the smaller ones in town. Naruto cried out, "Wait, it can't be." Mainly to himself, but, sure enough, when he turned the girl's head over to look at her face, he saw it was indeed Hinata Hyuga. Many questions were racing through Naruto's head, but his top priority was to get Hinata out of there. It was impossible to predict what might happen to her in such a public setting. In order to find Tsunade and seek assistance, he made another shadow clone. He also made about 6 more to try to clean his apartment so Hinata could enter more easily. He carried her with her head resting against his chest and his arms directly beneath her, allowing her wings to drape over his arms. After making a careful effort to lift her so as not to worsen her injuries, he hurried to try to get Hinata to his apartment, blushing a little because he had never carried anyone like that before. By all accounts, Tsunade was having a good day for the most part. Things have been fairly quiet ever since she took office. Although she detested paperwork and found it annoying to listen to reports like the one she was currently hearing for Team 7, the benefits seemed to outweigh the drawbacks. She had a group of devoted Anbu who could do anything she needed done. Shizune was the only person to bother her when she wanted a bottle of sake, and the only people she had to answer to were some elderly jerks on the council who would most likely die in the coming years. It was therefore not surprising when a certain blonde knucklehead knocked, or rather pounded, on Kakashi's window as she was finishing the report. "Ba-chan. Ba-chan, I need your help, it's an emergency." After approaching the window and violently attempting to seize Naruto, Sakura was taken aback when he began to wave his hands in front of his face. Wait, don't shoot the messenger clone." "Tsunade, Sakura, stand down." After that, Sakura resumed admiring her crush, and Sasuke resumed ignoring her. "Okay, you're one of Naruto's shadow clones, I'm guessing so. What brings you here?" The Hokage and the Jonin in attendance noticed that the clone became a little uneasy. "Well, the boss found someone lying in the street being beaten up by a mob and asked me to come get you." "Well, why didn't that baka actually think for once and take them to the hospital? That blockhead is as dense as a post." Sakura was upset. Tsunade was thinking deeply. Even though Naruto enjoyed playing practical jokes, he would never make fun of someone who needed medical help. He was not inclined to do that. Furthermore, she shared everyone else's curiosity about why he didn't just take this person to the hospital. About half of the hundreds of scenarios that went through her head were unpleasant. She figured it wouldn't hurt to find out what was happening anyhow. With that, she looked at Kakashi. "Kakashi, is there anything else important you need to report that cannot be written up later?" "Not that I'm aware of, Hokage-sama. Then I expect your written report sometime tomorrow. For now, go and pick up your pay. You are dismissed." There were 3 highs as the rest of Team 7 left the room. "Shizune?" "Yes, milady." Shizune felt it was appropriate to at least act professional, even though she had a hunch what her master was going to say. "I need you to cancel the rest of my appointments today. If it's Jiraiya, tell him to wait until I get back to give his report. This may be a prank, Shizune, but my gut is telling me that Naruto would not be this serious for nothing." Tsunade then headed off to follow the shadow clone to Naruto's apartment with a medical kit that contained the essentials for medical field treatment as well as a few extras for inside cases, such as a camera and evidence collection kit. The Hyuga compound was bustling with activity when Neji returned from his training. He thought, "This is odd. I wonder what has caught everyone's attention today. Did I miss today's crucial clan meeting?" He approached a young man named Ko Hyuga, a member of the branch house he recognized, and inquired about the situation after deciding he needed answers. "Oh, Neji-san, I take it you haven't heard what was going on today." Ko, I wouldn't be asking if I already knew. Did something important happen? Well, Neji, it seems that Hinata has been banished from the clan, Kei said. Neji was somewhat stunned. He would acknowledge that he wasn't one of Hinata's strongest supporters until recently, but even he was a little taken aback to learn that she was no longer a member of the clan. However, the branch member who had previously spared Hinata hurried up to Neji before he could inquire further. Neji thanked the member and left to find out what his uncle wanted with him. Neji-san. Hiashi-sama demands your presence in his office at once. You wish to see me, Hiashi-sama? As soon as Hiashi said, Neji knew something was wrong. If Hiashi's tone had the ability to alter temperature, Neji would have already suffered frostbite. I need you to rid this household of Hinata's things. You need not know why she was banished. Other than she was a disgrace to the clan. Do whatever you wish with her former belongings, but I do not wish to see them anymore. Do I make myself clear? Neji said, Hi, Hiashi-sama. Deep in contemplation, he left his uncle's office. He had some doubts about the precise nature of the clan's activities. A banishment of an heiress is not arbitrary. Everyone else's hushed tones indicated that something significant had occurred, but it was being kept under wraps. In any event, Neji was aware that he needed to find a way to give Hinata her belongings, if nothing else, and that he had to preserve them for her. With the assistance of a main branch member who held the former heiress in high regard, he entered the clan's archives and produced an unexpectedly sizable classified file that contained all of Hinata's personal data. In order to seal all of Hinata's personal belongings, he went into his room and got a sealing scroll from Tenten for his birthday last year. This included her book of pressed flowers, a small chest beneath her futon that held her diary and other trinkets, her clothes, her photo album that included all of her personal photos, her small jewelry box that was left to him by her late mother, and a small fox plush toy that her teammates gave her as a gag gift while she was in the hospital. After sealing everything, Neji crept out of the compound and made his way directly to the Hokage Tower. Tsunade was a little taken aback to see more of Naruto's clones ostensibly performing housework when she arrived at his apartment after receiving instructions from his clone. 3 clones were presumably cleaning the bathroom, 2 were sweeping the floor of his apartment to remove the dust, 1 was washing the few dishes in the sink, 2 were cleaning his refrigerator and household of trash, including the used ramen cups that were all over his floor, and 2 were carrying 2 baskets full of clothes to the laundromat in the complex for some serious cleaning. In his typical raucous manner, the 10th Naruto, whom Tsunade hoped was the original, came up to welcome her. Ba-chan, you're finally here. She was a little more worried about his emergency call here, even though she was ticking off her nickname. Look, Naruto, while I think it's great that you are cleaning up after yourself, unless this is an actual emergency, I need. Naruto claimed, but it is, Ba-chan. Follow me, as he escorted Tsunade into his apartment. It was a charming little living area. She had to admit the kitchen, the first room you saw when you entered, had a potted plant that appeared to be well maintained. The kitchen was furnished with a refrigerator, a stove that appeared to be overused, and a microwave oven that appeared to be hardly used. There was also a small table and 2 chairs. The kitchen was finished with a tiny sink. The tiny corridor that separated the bedroom from the bathroom and shower was to the right. The blonde genin led Tsunade to his bedroom. It seemed that the only room in the house that wasn't undergoing some sort of spring cleaning at the moment was the bedroom. Naruto paused before making a move to open the door. The conflict in his eyes was visible to Tsunade before becoming impatient. She waited for a few minutes for Naruto to try to find the courage to show her what was behind the door. She didn't know exactly what was going on with her fellow blonde or why he appeared unusually hesitant, so it was more of a request than an order. Naruto, either you open that door or I will be forced to fine you for filing a false report. Naruto reluctantly agreed after mentally waging a war and escorted the female Hokage into his bedroom. Tsunade was taken aback by what she saw. The Hyuga heiress, she had not yet learned of the girl's situation. With 2 wings sprouting from her back, was lying on Naruto's bed. For the next minute, she tried to get rid of whatever genjutsu might have been applied to her as a practical joke. The Godem was a little taken aback when she saw that the wings were real. Even though it was not the most bizarre thing she had ever seen, a chorus line of dancing toads on her 21st birthday, thanks to her perverted teammate, it was still pretty unbelievable. She approached the girl, who seemed to be sleeping, and observed her state. She turned to Naruto, who started to explain that he brought her here after witnessing her being attacked by a small mob because he wasn't entirely sure how the hospital staff would respond to a person with wings. She smirked as Naruto had a deep red blush and ran out of the room faster than Orochimaru in a hawk sanctuary. Naruto, I will do what I can. Though truth be told, I have never seen anything like this before. That said, I need you to leave the room. I may end up having to try and take some of her clothes off in order to check for other injuries, so, Unless you want Hinata-chan here to think you are a pervert or something, I'm going to have to ask you to leave for now." As he walked away, she gave a small laugh and then looked at Hinata. To begin with, Tsunade examined her wings because they were the most intriguing feature of her body. When she examined the area of Hinata's back where the wings protruded, she noticed two unusual features. First, there seemed to be flaps where the wings might enter or even fold into the body, and second, what looked like a portion of a seal that was decomposing more slowly than usual. As far as Tsunade could tell, the seal was the kanji for wings, with what looked to be half of a set of runes arranged in a circle around the kanji. Whatever had activated the seal, she figured that was probably why it was starting to fade. Tsunade acted swiftly, pulling a camera from her kit and snapping multiple images of the seal. Since the majority of cases in a village were related to abuse or other crimes, cameras and other similar supplies were required to record abuse or other noteworthy findings, so they were a standard component of any in-village medical kit. Tsunade examined Hinata's additional wounds after documenting the seal. Fortunately, her injuries were relatively minor, with only minor cuts and shallow stab wounds and some bruising on her arms and legs. Amazingly, her wings appeared to be unharmed, albeit slightly soiled. Though Tsunade had no idea how the wings didn't have any scratches on them, she surmised that they might serve as a sort of shield for Hinata. After recording it in her medical report, Tsunade periodically paused to tend to a painful wound or to relieve some of the bruises as she looked up and down Hinata's body for any broken bones or other injuries. She then proceeded to examine Hinata's head and neck for signs of head trauma. At that moment, she became aware of the bruises on Hinata's neck and left side of her face compared to the rest of her injuries. It was unusual. It appears that she was violently seized by the neck and given a severe slap across the face. These wounds did not fit the description of a group assault. They resembled the kinds of wounds Tsunade had observed in child abuse cases. Tsunade asked no one in particular, "Just what the hell happened to you, Hinata?" After checking injuries and taking notes for a few more minutes, Tsunade remembered Naruto, who had completed tidying up his apartment as best he could. Tsunade needed to take things one step at a time because she had no idea how he would respond to what she had planned or what she would actually do about it. "Okay, Gaki, I fixed her up as best as I could now. I'm not entirely sure what's going on here with your little friend, but for right now, she needs to stay here." "What? But, Tsunade-bachan, what am I gonna do? I still have to meet with my team, do missions, and all the rest of that kinda stuff. I can't just abandon my duties as a ninja." She squeezed her nose bridge when Naruto stopped talking. She said, "Naruto, just shut up and listen. Look, I assume you didn't bring her to the hospital due to her wings, right?" Even saying it seemed off for the 50-year-old Hokage. Naruto gave a nod. In her condition, she probably isn't going to be moving very far for a while. She is going to be sore for a while, and whatever caused her to grow those wings obviously took a lot out of her. She will probably tire easily and be kinda hungry when she gets up and about. I am not sure I want very many people around right now, especially since some of the injuries she had don't look like they came from whatever beating she took at the hands of that mob you witnessed. I will do my best to keep people from harassing you as best as I can, but right now she needs a friend and she needs a place to stay away from prying eyes. I can cover for you as far as your team is concerned, and if money is an issue, I can help you there myself. I would assign this as a mission, but it would be classified as an A rank and I can't assign an A rank mission to a genin by himself." She raised her hand to prevent further arguments. "Besides, when she does wake up, you will probably need to calm her down. Chances are she will be very confused and scared over what is going on right now. Just try to be patient with her. Either Shizune or I will be by sometime tomorrow to check up on her to make sure that she is healing properly. If I can find anything that might explain what is going on, she will be the first to know. Other than that, the only people that I expect will want to know what is going on will probably be her team and yours, so, unless it is someone in that group, or unless it is someone you trust, please keep them out and not let them see her like this. Do you understand, Naruto?" He merely gave a head nod. He had never had anyone in his house before, much less a girl, so he was a little hesitant about caring for Hinata, not because he believed she was a monster. Furthermore, he wasn't positive Hinata would want him around. She could hardly stay awake long enough to talk to him, so why should she? In addition, the mere sight of him would make her flush. He most likely embarrassed her every time he was around, and it infuriated her to the point of flushing. But he had a point, the old hag, as he so lovingly referred to her. Something like this would be a bit too much for most people to handle. Based on the civilian response, Tsunade ruffled his hair and immediately returned to her office, saying, "Don't worry, Ba-chan. I promise nothing bad will happen to her while I'm around. You know me, I never go back on my word, because that is my nindo, my way of the ninja. Datbeo." She needed to review some evidence and do some serious planning. She probably had a master of perverted seals to converse with as well. Sitting in his office, Hiashi Hyuga reflected on the day's events. He and the other elders attempted, but were unsuccessful, to locate the former heiress after the initial shock of what had happened subsided. They would have searched using the Byakugan, but all buildings constructed since the Nidaime Hokage Tobarama Senju's time had been improved with materials that made it impossible to see inside buildings and other structures with the Byakugan. It seems that the idea of a big crowd of people who could see through walls unnerved the general public. As they ought to be, Hiashi reflected. Many members of the clan believed that the Hyuga were the most powerful clan in Konoha because the Uchiha and Senju clans only had one member remaining in each family. As a result, they had the right to govern themselves free from outside intervention. The clan was perceived by others as constantly pushing the limits of their power, which was one of the reasons why they had been at odds with the Hokage lately. Due to the actions of his clan, particularly the application of the cursed seal technique of the Hyuga main family, Hiashi himself had been at odds with both the late Sandaime and Yondaime Hokages. Despite the seal's usefulness, the third and fourth Hokages believed that its potential for abuse against the branch house made its use tantamount to torture. All of that, though, did not even occur to Hiashi. His thoughts were filled with feelings of anger, hatred, and betrayal toward his late wife, Sango Hyuga. According to clan law, you had to marry someone from the Hyuga clan or a civilian who had no family or history of being born into another clan. The potential loss of the Byakugan to another clan through marriage or having a child with someone who was not a Hyuga by birth was one of the Hyuga's greatest fears. But having another clan taint the Byakugan was the worst fear. It was believed that if two people had a child together, one of whom was a Byakugan bearer and the other either had a different Kekkei Genkai or a Hiden Jutsu, the parents might dilute the Byakugan and taint it. It was possible that the Byakugan would be much weaker than someone of pure birth. If that were the case, the tainted eyes could be passed on to their children, further contaminating the clan until the Byakugan was nearly worthless. Hiashi, however, had decided against marrying someone from his own clan because he was more afraid of inbreeding than of outsiders. He was drawn to Sango for that reason. She was a peasant with no known name who had no family ties to any clan. She was extremely kind and beautiful. 5 years prior to the Kyubi no Yoko attack, he married her. After falling deeply in love with her, she gave him a daughter, whom they named Hinata. About 2 months after the attack, however, a sinister secret that Sango had managed to conceal from Hiashi for so long was revealed following the birth of Hanabi, his second daughter. Rewind. 4 weeks following Hanabi's birth, Hiashi made his way to his cherished wife Sango's bedroom. As with the birth of his first daughter, he had been out of town on important business when his second daughter was born. He could not wait to see his wife holding his child in her arms. But he noticed an odd glow emanating from the master bedroom before he opened the door. Hiashi hurried to unlock the door, but it wasn't until the glow had long since gone that he was able to enter. Hiashi saw an incredible scene when he opened the door. His wife was standing there, perspiring a little, and she had wings sprouting from her back. Hanabi, his 4-week-old daughter, was lying in the crib beside the bed taking swift action. Hiashi rendered Sango unconscious and escorted her into a remote area of the forest outside of Konoha. In the morning, Sango woke up to see her husband wielding the family katana. She was terrified, mostly because she knew what was going to happen and that, while she was bound and had her tenketsu sealed, there was nothing she could do to stop him. She tried her hardest to calm her angry husband in spite of this knowledge. Hiashi Dana, what is the meaning of this? Hiashi practically spat out, "You bloodline whore, you know damn well what this is about. You lied to me. You told me that you had no Kekkei Genkai. You said you were an unnamed civilian with no ties to any other clan. I want answers, and I want them now." At this point, Sango was crying, especially after Hiashi stopped using her name and koi, and instead began insulting her. Hiashi's eyes, too, were leaking a few. "I gave you my heart, I married you, and I even shared the same bed with you. Do you really think you could have kept this a secret for that long? Answer me, Sango." Hiashi was furious. Sango shouted, "I lied because I loved you, Hiashi. I was in love with you, but I knew your clan would never have let you and me be together if they knew about my abilities. I knew what your clan rules said, so I kept my secret in the hopes that you would never find out. Please, forgive me." Hiashi was struggling to maintain his calm. This was his wife, a natural monster with whom he had dedicated his entire life and with whom he had shared his most treasured moments. She was hardly human due to her bloodline. How could a pair of wings be concealed? Hiashi was conflicted. He would have to be the one to cleanse the clan of the stain caused by her own actions, even though this was the love of his life. "You know very well what I must do, Sango." Sango began to realize that these would be her final moments on Earth. "Before you do, Hiashi, I have two favors to ask of you. Consider it my last request, as a person and as your wife, she said. Hiashi gave a nod. At the very least, he would be honorable enough to fulfill the final wishes of a woman who would soon pass away, even though he currently detested things and his wife. No, this thing in front of him, with a fierce passion. First, Hiashi-kun, answer me this. If things were different, had you not been the head of the clan, had you only been another member of the family, had you known my secret, would you still go through with all of this? Would you have stood up for our marriage, our courtship, and the births of our children? Would you still love me? Hiashi responded quickly. Had I known your secret, I would never have courted you. I cannot say if I would have still loved you, but as the head of the clan, I need to do what is best for it. I cannot and will not risk the Hyuga dojutsu for something as flimsy as my ill-begotten love for a monster like you. I would have followed clan tradition by killing our firstborn on the spot and killed you for your possible taint. You know that. Haishi's voice was as cold as the icy Yuki no Kuni land. You are a mistake of nature. Any more so than any other Kekkei Genkai makes you a mistake? Hiashi, you? Silence. Was Haishi's succinct and direct statement. I will not be lectured by the likes of you. You have no right to talk of the Byakugan like that. It is now considered the ultimate dojutsu in this village, even in the world. It will not be threatened by the likes of you now. You have one last request, before I carry out your punishment. Sango was aware that Hiashi would never change her mind, no matter what she said now. One of his biggest faults had always been his supreme loyalty to his clan first and all others second. If he had to choose between the clan and the village, he would always rule in favor of his clan. The fact that she would not be able to bid farewell to either of her daughters was now her only regret. You are not the man I married, Hiashi Hyuga. You are a monster that masquerades as a man. You simply destroy anything that doesn't fit in with your worldview. However, if any part of the man I fell in love with is still in there, then I have one last request to fill. Please, do not let my daughters suffer for my mistake. Please, let them live. Hiashi felt conflicted. On the one hand, Sango and her children's lives were forfeited under clan law. She was no longer able to influence what would happen to them. However, he did have to fulfill at least one of her requests because she was the love of his life. Very well, I will grant you your last request. However, if either of your daughters show signs of your cursed bloodline, I will be forced to correct my mistake. Is that clear? Sango gave a nod. She hoped one day, her daughters would forgive her for not being able to keep her secret a bit longer to be able to be there for them. She sensed that they would have a difficult time together, and she was aware that nobody would be there to support them. I sincerely apologize. With that, Hiashi channeled chakra into his katana and charged his wife, decapitating Sango Hyuga. Hanabi-tan, Hinata-chan, I hope you find it in your hearts to forgive your foolish mother one day for all the pain I am about to cause you. Then he whistled to two branch house members who were awaiting his cue with a heavy heart. Hiashi departed the clearing after saying, dispose of the body. If you repeat even one word of what happened here, not even the Inuzuka hunter Nin will be able to find your wretched corpses. Final flashback. Hiashi furiously furrowed his brow. What happened that night was to be kept a secret and never discussed again. Following the incident, he started making Hinata's training more intense before abandoning her as a hopeless case and entrusting Kurenai Yuhi with her training. Then this mess occurred. He merely hoped that he would only have to eradicate Hinata because he was aware of what he would eventually have to do. He could handle her loss. Hinata was a failure anyway, but he was aware that he might have to kill Hanabi, his other daughter as well. He would have to wait to find out if she inherited her mother's bloodline. Finding Hinata would be his top priority for the time being, though, in order to finally remove her stain from Hyuga's name. After returning to her office, Tsunade sent the photos she had gathered to the Enbu Crime Scene Investigation Department for development. They were given an S-class ranking, which meant that only she would see them and that anyone who revealed what was on them would be put to death right away. She was talking about her findings with her former teammate, the village's Madness Jiraiya, while she waited for the pictures to develop. Since the photos were of such a high classification, it didn't take long for them to develop. Jiraiya and Tsunade, with Shizun's assistance, went over every detail in an attempt to determine what was happening with Hinata. Well, Tsunade-heim, I can't really tell you much about this. This seal is not something I have ever encountered before. If it was on her, then it was either a clan seal, in which case it would have stayed with whatever clan she got her wings from, or it was a newly created seal that has never been documented. In either case, I can't say I can give you much info about this. Sorry. Tsunade gave a headshake. She held up pictures of the girl's face and neck bruises and said, it's not your fault, Jiraiya. To be honest, I don't quite know what is with those wings. It was like they somehow were able to protect the girl from the majority of the damage she would have received. Not only that, look at these. These are not consistent with a mob beating. These are more closely related to bruising patterns we see on abuse patients. Someone slapped her hard, and strangled her with one hand. It is a miracle she is even alive. But, Tsunade Shisho, who would do something like that to someone like Hinata? Before Tsunade could say anything more, there was a knock on her office door. I'm not entirely sure, Shizune. Someone headed out for the girl. I would have interviewed her when I checked up on her this afternoon, but I felt that waking her up in her condition would only aggravate the situation. For now though, we need to figure out just what is going on. Just wait a minute, please. Okay. Whoever this is, we do not speak of what is going on with Hinata. Got that, you too? The last thing we need right now is to have a swarm of people gossiping about all of this. Got it? The other two people in the room concurred. Hinata didn't need any more publicity at this time. Tsunade yelled, okay. Enter. To the person on the other side of the door opened, revealing Neji Hyuga holding what looked like a large black file under his arm and a giant scroll strapped to his back. Hokage-sama. Neji bowed in greeting. Tsunade chose to proceed with caution because she was a little curious about the purpose of Neji's visit right now. Her instincts were telling her to be extra cautious around the Hyuga clan right now. What with everything going on for Hinata right now? Neji, what brings you here this evening? Neji took a standing position even though it wasn't the best way to respond to the Hokage. Neji chose to go on in the hopes of improving his explanation. Hokage-sama, I have come here to ask for a favor. I recently found out about Hinata being banished from the clan. Unfortunately, whatever circumstances that incited this decision have been covered up by the clan. I do not know what exactly is going on, but as soon as I returned from practice today, Hiashi-sama commanded me to rid the compound of Hinata's things. That is what this scroll on my back is for. It contains Hinata's things, which I sealed into the scroll for easy storage. The file I am carrying was given to me by a member of the main house. Apparently it is a file on Hinata, though what it contains is anyone's guess, since it has a blood seal that only Hinata can open. Since I do not know where Hinata ended up, I ask that, if you know where she is, that you give these things to her as they are rightfully hers. I cannot, in good conscience, simply dispose of her things like yesterday's garbage. Alright. I will do that. Neji, I do know where your cousin is, but right now her status is classified information on a need-to-know basis. I cannot go into details, but if you wish to find out, I can arrange things so that you and your teammates would pair up with her team to do some errands for the person that is taking care of her right now. It would be classified as a D-rank mission, but I can explain things more tomorrow. Does that work for you? The legendary sucker responded. Of course. Tsunade-sama. Neji returned to the Hyuga compound with a thoughtful expression on his face after saying, good, in that case, I will see you and your team tomorrow afternoon. You were dismissed? As Neji left the tower and headed for the Hyuga compound, he thought, hopefully, I will be able to find out what is going on with you, cousin. At some point during the night, Hinata awoke. There was no clock anywhere, so she was unable to determine the time. Since the full moon was already visible and the moon was backed by a clear night with bright stars, it must have been late. She was about to freak out because she was in a strange room when she became aware of two things. First of all, nothing too serious had happened yet because she was still completely clothed. Second, she noticed the picture on a windowsill in the room. The image was of Team 7. As panic started to set in, she thought, oh no, Cammy, please no, please let this just be a horrible nightmare. She fervently hoped that this was not the location she had assumed it to be. When she heard a voice behind her that she knew well and that would normally make her weak in the knees, but now filled her with fear, her hopes were shattered. The words, oh, Hinata, you're already up, came from Naruto Uzumaki, her crush. Hinata couldn't handle it. She was stuck in her crush's bedroom with no way out, and she had wings sprouting from her back, so she did what she was naturally inclined to do. She cried out, go away. And then, like a feather cocoon, she walked to the corner of the room, put her wings closed around her, put her head on her shoulders, and wrapped her arms around her legs. She tried to squirm into the room's corner, but the sound of her sobbing could be heard. Although Naruto was a little taken aback by her outburst, he understood that Hinata needed comfort at the moment. Tsunade did admit that she would need a friend at the moment and that she would likely be terrified to death once she regained her bearings. He may not have known Hinata all that long, but Naruto knew what it was like to be an outcast for something beyond his control. In addition, Naruto was somehow offended by Hinata's behavior. He seemed to be hurt by the way she appeared so frail and small, the way her tears seemed to rip at his heart, the way her sobs felt like a million burning kunai piercing his very being, and even the way she shivered as if she were in the middle of a blizzard. This was the most he had ever felt for anything. A sobbing Hinata seemed to be a sin against Cammy. It was as though witnessing her in such fear and solitude was a cruel violation of all known natural laws. Something had to be done about it. He had to find a way to ease Hinata's suffering. He approached her slowly and knelt down in front of her. He pushed the wings away slowly so he could see Hinata. Hinata, it's okay, you don't have to be scared. Hinata begged Naruto to listen to her voice. Naruto-kun, please. I don't want you to SSS see me Lee like this, she said. She didn't want to hear the accusation in his voice, or the hatred, disgust, and all-around loathing that was sure to follow. Knowing that her crush would never accept someone like her was making her heart start to break. How could he accept a freak like her? After all, Sakura was his target. How could Hinata compete with a normal person? Hinata was crying uncontrollably now because she knew she would never be able to fulfill her dreams of becoming a mother, helping her former clan, or telling Naruto how much she loved him. The former heiress was shocked by what Naruto did next. He dragged her out of the corner, laid her on his bed, and gave her a hug. "It's okay. Hinata, I'm here." Naruto was doing everything he could to soothe her. All he knew was that he had to keep talking, and hopefully, he could see a part of the Hinata that he knew was still there. "You don't have to be scared of me. But I'm an F freak, an monstrosity, AAM mistake of K Kami-sama. You are not any of those things. Hinata, you are a kind person, a friend, and a human being just like me. So, you have wings, big deal. We're ninja, we've seen plenty of weird stuff. I mean, I've ridden on a gigantic talking toad and fought a guy that could turn into a giant sand raccoon thing. For crying out loud." He said this in a tone that would warm the heart, or at least elicit a giggle, from most anyone that heard it. Hinata smiled slightly despite her distress. "Anyone that thinks you are a freak, a monster, or anything like that can kiss my furry orange ass," she said. "There, that's the Hinata I know," he exclaimed, grinning contentedly. Hinata cast a critical glance up at Naruto. She was watching his body language for any indications of dishonesty, such as disgust in his eyes or elsewhere. His cerulean eyes showed no signs of dishonesty or disgust to her. She saw only complete care and understanding. She was in awe. Not only did he not believe she was strange, but he also desired to be in her presence. She practically threw herself into his arms and cried into his shirt, clutching his chest as if her very life depended on it. The two genin remained that way for the next 30 minutes, one attempting to vent all of her fears and frustrations while the other attempted to shoulder the first's burdens in an attempt to lessen the suffering. Naruto kept holding her after she calmed down because she was gradually growing more exhausted. "You know, Hinata, you could probably tell me how you got like this, but I think we can wait until tomorrow. I'll, leave you to have my bed. I can sleep in the living room or something." He then made a motion to leave the space. Hinata asked as he started to leave the room, "Naruto-kun?" He asked her if she needed anything as he turned around. She allowed her cheeks to flush a little. She cautiously said, See, can I ask you for an FF favor?" Hoping not to infringe upon Naruto's generosity and kindness inquiringly, he asked her what she desired. She looked away quickly, embarrassed that she had asked and ashamed that she was worried that Naruto would either think she was a wanton woman or would not want to be so close to someone like her. "I wanted to know if you would share the bed with me tonight," she said. However, Naruto appeared perplexed rather than put off or even offended by the suggestion. "Are you sure, Hinata? I mean, I wouldn't want you thinking I'm some kind of perv or something. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't do something like that to you in my sleep, but I don't want you to feel awkward around me." Hinata looked at him with astonishment. Why would she believe that? She concluded quietly, "I just don't want to feel alone tonight. It's nothing like that, Naruto-kun." After a minute or so of silence, the bed was given an additional weight. Hinata looked around to see Naruto crawling into bed, lifting the covers, and inviting Hinata in with her wings covering them both and the blankets on top. She climbed in, embraced him right away, and laid her head in the bend of his neck. She said, Thank you, Naruto-kun," before falling asleep. Naruto watched Hinata sleep for a while he lay there. Sometimes, when she was sleeping, she would whimper and shiver, which meant that she was having a bad dream. He would then try to hold Hinata close to him by putting his arms around her. He was struck by how right everything felt as he held her there. Holding Hinata in this position felt as natural as breathing. For some reason, despite his confusion, Naruto believed that whatever he was feeling was correct. He promised, looking down at the sleeping form on top of him. "I swear to you, Hinata, I won't leave you even if the entire village deserts you. You are too wonderful a person to disappoint and let people see you in this state. That is a lifelong commitment." In Konohagakure no Sato, a new morning had begun at 8 o'clock. Individuals were just starting to get up and begin their daily routines. The morning rush was causing businesses to open their doors. The following morning, sunlight streamed through the window of Naruto's charming apartment. When he realized something was wrong, he yawned and tried to get out of bed. He was fairly certain that he had no pets and that he had not called forth any toads to entertain him, but there appeared to be some weight on him that he was certain was not his. When he looked down, he saw a pair of wings and a mess of bluish-black hair. At that moment, he was reminded of what had happened the day before. I remember now. Ba-chan asked me to keep an eye on Hinata after I discovered her lying in the street. He trailed off before recalling Hinata's request, which made him blush in memory. Yeah, and then Hinata and I talked and he said he was a little flustered about the whole situation, but he kept his word and didn't do anything perverted last night. You didn't wake up every day to find a close friend dozing on top of you, after all. Naruto was caught off guard by that statement. How long had Hinata been a close friend? He thought she was a shy, dark, weirdo, but when did he see past that? Why, after all, had he been so defensive about her lately? Her wings might have played a role, but it didn't explain why he was so reluctant to let anyone, even those he completely trusted, get close to her. To be honest, he didn't understand what he was doing. For some reason it felt right, but it didn't fully make sense to him. She still behaved strangely around him. Though he assumed that the Chunin exams had improved his perception of her, he was certain that a girl stuttering in front of everyone was not normal, and that a girl fainting constantly was definitely not normal. Hinata chose to wake him up before he could finish his thoughts with a yawn that, if Naruto was to be honest, was more adorable than a kitten's mewling. His whiskered cheeks flushed as soon as the thought occurred to him. Where are these thoughts coming from, man? Hinata woke up slowly. She saw Naruto staring back at her when she opened her eyes. She chose to close her eyes, mumble, "Good morning," to the dream Naruto, and attempt to go back to sleep after realizing that she was still dreaming when she saw him. It was only at that point that she started to realize some things. First, she wasn't at the Hyuga compound in her room. Second, there was a subtle ramen odor all around her. 3. She was feeling sore, which was a clear indicator to her that she was most likely awake. At last, she didn't feel like she was lying on a mattress. At that moment, she became horrified and almost leapt from the bed when she realized that she had not only shared a bed with Naruto the night before, but she was also in his apartment. She became even more alarmed when she unintentionally knocked over some objects on the shelf behind her. She became even more anxious as she tried to recall why she had come to Naruto's apartment in the first place, and the events of the day before came flooding back. Naruto needed some time to recover from his shock at the former heiress's behavior because he had not fully anticipated their response. He walked over to the heiress to calm her down a bit after he recovered from his mild shock, and then he picked up the various objects that had fallen from his shelf. He made the decision to try and at least say, "Good morning," when she eventually composed herself. Morning Hinata, sleep well? I hope I, didn't bother you or anything." Hinata managed to stammer out, no, it was fine, Naruto-kun." After gaining her bearings, "I apologize if I inconvenienced you." "Nah, it was fine. I'm just not used to sharing an apartment is all," said Naruto. Then, recalling what Tsunade had told him the day before, he attempted to ascertain Hinata's condition. "So, Hinata, how are you feeling? Ba-chan told me you would probably be real tired and sore and stuff." Hinata looked mortified. The Hokage saw me like this. Having to cope with her own family seeing her yesterday was difficult enough, but to have the Hokage witness her state. Naruto attempted to calm Hinata just as she was about to have a panic attack. Wait, Hinata, it's not what you think. She wasn't really upset or anything, just surprised. You looked pretty beat up, so I went to get Ba-chan and see if she could help fix you up. You kinda did look like hell warmed over after I chased that mob. She just wanted to make sure you were alright, okay? Please don't be mad." Hinata paused to take in what Naruto had said. She assumed that making snap judgments wasn't healthy for her, but based on Naruto's words, she assumed that it made sense. She assumed that Tsunade, being a medic nin, would be required to assist if she were hurt in any way. Nevertheless, having the Hokage approach her so closely was a little unsettling. However, she felt a little dizzy and had to sit down on the bed before she could carry on with her rambling thoughts. "Whoa, take it easy, Hinata. Ba-chan said you might be a little tired and stuff after all of this. So why don't you just sit here? I'll go make us some ramen or something, that is, if you're hungry or anything." That would be fine. Naruto-kun, I'll have CHCH chicken flavor if you have it." Naruto was about to leave when Hinata made a sound to signal that she had more to say. "Alright, great, I'm sure I can find a cup of chicken for you," she said. I just wanted to say, thank you, Naruto-kun. I know I must be a terrible burden to you like this." After saying, "Hey, don't be like that, Hinata, I told you, it's no problem. You are not a burden at all. You're just different as all. Besides, what are friends for if they don't help each other out once in a while?" Naruto headed to his kitchen to prepare breakfast. Hinata let out a sigh. She figured she wouldn't complain, but she thought it would have been too much to expect Naruto to like her as more than a friend. She was relieved that her crush accepted her, even if only as a friend, because at the moment, she was having a hard time understanding anything. Tsunade turned to face the 4 individuals in front of her. They were now called Team Guy, and they were waiting for the rest of Team 8 to show up. Tenten was seated on the floor, holding a kunai between her fingertips as she watched Maida Guy, who was sitting on his back, loudly encouraging Rock Lee as he performed push-ups with one finger. Neji was just leaning against the wall and his normally emotionless, pale eyes were staring off into space. The team was fortunate not to have to wait long because, aside from Neji, nobody really knew who or what they were waiting for. 3 of Team 8's 4 members entered the room with a somewhat upset expression on their faces after Lee finished his 500th push-up. Kurenai was the first to say anything. Tsunade-sama, I apologize for being late, but my team and I cannot find Hinata anywhere in. It is all right. Kuriani, if you would be so kind as to shut the door, I will be able to begin this meeting. But, Hokage-sama, shouldn't we send out a party to try and track Hinata-san down? Team 8 closed the door behind them, and Team Guy joined them at standing at attention. I know you all have questions, Shino. But I would ask that you please close the door. I will explain things to you once we are all settled here. Shizune, who had been standing next to Tsunade with Tun in her arms, surprised everyone by putting the pig down and going to install some security seals around the office before coming back to her master's side. Everyone gave a few perplexed and shocked looks when I said, I have called both of your teams here for a special mission. It technically counts as a D-rank mission, but it has at least a rank, if not S rank, secrets attached. Yesterday afternoon, Hinata was found by one of our shinobi being attacked by a mob. What? Are you kidding me? When I get my hands on the bastards that did this, I'll... Silence. Kiba, let me finish before you have another outburst like that, or I will personally see to it that you are sent back to the academy for remedial training. Am I perfectly clear? Tsunade went on after he finished protesting. She took a moment to gauge their reactions before Kurenai intervened. As I said, she was found by one of our shinobi yesterday and is currently recovering at that person's apartment. They would have taken her to the hospital, but due to some rather unusual complications, I was forced to treat her there. I would tell you exactly what her condition is, but I have my doubts about if you would believe me at face value. Hokage-sama, doesn't it defeat the purpose of stating that there are such high secrets involved with her condition, then not tell us about it? Tsunade let out a sigh. Yes, I suppose it does, but, as I said, if I were to tell you, you wouldn't believe me on that. You can trust me. Shino then reverted to his normally reserved demeanor. I would not be too sure. Hokage-sama, why, do you ask? As ninja, we see some rather peculiar things on a regular basis. I am sure we could believe in just about anything you could tell us. Tsunade had been thinking. On the one hand, she wanted to avoid crowding Hinata with people until she had a better understanding of the situation. She also had doubts about how well this news would be received by others. However, since they would be on a mission to assist her, she assumed that they would eventually learn. Besides, she had Hinata's team, Hinata's cousin, 2 of the most eccentric shinobi in the village, and a bun-haired kunoichi who seemed to only interact with her team if anyone could be somewhat understanding. She supposed that these 7 people probably could. The 5 genin and 2 jonin nodded as she started to share what she knew with them, beginning with her wings and working her way down. Alright, I will tell you all what is going on, but for right now, until we learn more about her circumstances, anything having to do with Hinata is considered top secret until otherwise told, understand? She said. She measured each of the 7 of them's responses at the end. Given that they could likely look a tailed beast in the eye and not be at all intimidated, it was not surprising that Guy and Lee appeared captivated. Tenten appeared uneasy, but she was wise enough to keep any negative thoughts about Hinata to herself. Although Neji was more difficult to read, she assumed that anything that didn't appear to be an expression of pure hate from the typically stoic branch member was encouraging. True to his nature, Shino only raised his eyebrows and showed no visible emotion, but Tsunade wasn't expecting much anyhow, while Kurenai wore a worried expression, which made sense given that she was a significant figure in young Hinata's life. Kiba's expression made it obvious that he thought this was some sort of big joke. The young Inuzuka chose to be the first to speak. Kiba seemed to have forgotten that he was addressing his superior. So, let me get this straight. Hinata, out of nowhere, sprouted a pair of wings, got beaten up by some random group of people, and got taken in by, of all people, Naruto. Why the hell would we believe you? Do you even realize how insane that makes you sound? That swiftly subdued the brazen young genin. Let me remind you, Genin Inuzuka, that I am your Hokage. I do have slightly more credibility than you, and I saw her condition firsthand. Now, before I give you all your missions, are you all comfortable with what I just told you? To be completely honest, Tsunade-sama, unless I see her myself, I don't really know what to say to that, Tenten said with complete candor. I have only really met Hinata once or twice, And she seemed like a nice person. I would really have to wait and reserve judgment for when I actually see her again. Yash. I believe that it would be most unyouthful to judge poor Hinata-san before we have a chance to see her. I will believe that she will be the same person, no matter what has happened to her. As he struck his trademark nice guy pose, complete with his dazzlingly white teeth, Guy boasted, "That's the spirit, Lee. Let us wait to see just what these hip and happening wings look like before we make any unyouthful conclusions, and if we do draw any mean-spirited conclusions beforehand, let us run 100 laps around the training field on our hands with an akamichi on our backs as penance." Everyone looked to Neji to see how he would respond. I must admit, that was not what I was expecting to hear, but I suspect there is more to it than what you have told. All I have heard was how Hinata betrayed the clan and was some kind of monster. I would like to hear her side before I believe even one word of my clan's actions. I somehow doubt that this purposely happened to her. I think I speak for my entire team, Hokage-sama, when I say that we would not think differently of her no matter how much she changes on the outside, replied Kurenai. Kiba and Shino both gave a nod of acknowledgement. The dog merely barked back, "Yeah, she's still our friend and comrade, no matter what happens to her, right Akamaru?" Unfazed, Shino just stood there. I am glad all of you are willing to see things that way. I am unsure how people will react to her, which is why I am asking for the utmost secrecy involving her right now. I do not think I could handle trying to answer too many questions about her right now, since I don't have any answers to give. Therefore, I am assigning your two teams to help her out. Guy, Tsunade started talking to the rest of Team Guy. I want your team to do some grocery shopping for Naruto and Hinata. Since Hinata will probably be there for a while, I need you to not only shop for her necessities, but for some healthier alternatives for Naruto. Heaven knows that he is the only being I know of that can live off of ramen. While you're at it, find him a cookbook so that the boy can learn to do something other than throw water in a pot and boil it. Aside from that, just get what they would need: hygiene products, cleaning supplies, and the like. Since it would look unusual for me to use village funds for this, I will pay for the supplies with my clan's own personal funds. As they are harder to trace and are under my direct control, it will not look suspicious if I pull funds from the Senju accounts, since it is my money and I can do with it what I wish. Kurenai, I want you and your team to go and help unpack Hinata's things at Naruto's apartment. I know you might feel more comfortable if Hinata were to stay with you, but I feel trying to move her, at least for now, would be too complicated. Besides, if she is going to stay anywhere, she might as well stay at the last place anyone is going to look for her, if anyone is after her. This scroll, Tsunade subsequently presented the document that Neji had to her before, contains all of Hinata's belongings. You will need to unseal her things, but this will be easier to transport. After that, Tsunade returned her focus to the entire group. Because of the concerns for her safety, I am going to have to ask for all of you to keep this as low-key as you can. I would avoid trying to show up around the same time. The less suspicion we have surrounding her whereabouts right now, the better. Guy, since your team will probably take the longest, and I have something that Neji and I will have to go through with Hinata once your team has completed your mission, I will ask that you wait to deliver the supplies you receive until sometime this evening. Kurenai, you can take your things to her this afternoon after I go and give her a medical checkup. Is that clear, all of you? Hi, Tsunade-sama, sounded from every shinobi in the room. With that, Teams 8 and Guy left for town to complete their missions. Tsunade decided that she needed a drink of sake. After all of this, I would have considered pursuing a career other than medical ninja if I had known that I would have been handling a situation like this. She was about to take a swig when she looked at Shizune, who appeared to be worried about something. Even I think some of this crap is weird, and I have the village madness and the Habiteme as former teammates. Shizune, is there something wrong? Before speaking, Shizune appeared to be considering what she would say next. Tsunade Shisho, aren't we forgetting one of the teams that you needed to inform of the situation? Shizune, what are you? Tsunade was about to inquire as to what Shizune was discussing when she became aware of what, or rather, who, Shizune was referring to, and her eyes widened. Crap. I forgot about Team 7. Shizune, try to find them and bring them to my office, immediately. Shizune said, "Hi, Shisho," before heading out to locate the 3 Team 7 members. Tsunade just sighed and leaned back in her chair. One of those days that was supposed to be a pain in the ass was starting to take shape. Sakura and Sasuke were waiting impatiently on what was now considered Team 7's bridge for their usually tardy sensei to arrive. Sakura was now concentrating on her missing teammate after Sasuke had rejected her for a date once more. Since he chose to follow his curiosity like a foolish cat yesterday, neither she nor Sasuke had seen the blonde idiot, as she so lovingly called him. He was not only late for practice today, but he also missed the mission report. She had grown tired of dealing with him as a teammate. Furthermore, Sasuke was far superior to a fool like Naruto. An image of Naruto was being used as a piñata by inner Sakura in her mind. Sasuke was also growing frustrated that the blonde had not yet appeared. He was keen to establish his dominance over the Dobi. It appeared as though the village outcast had started to catch up with Naruto ever since he returned with the Godima Hokage. Naruto had practically bonded with the new Hokage, was being trained by Asani, and had picked up a technique that his Sharingan couldn't replicate. The Avenger was enraged. What kind of attention could the Dobi be receiving? Why was he more unique? Kakashi made the decision to appear in a puff of smoke before either could further stew in their own feelings. Yo. Sakura gestured accusingly in the direction of her Cycloptic sensei. You're late, Kakashi-sensei. Sorry, Sakura-chan, I was lost on the road of life, Kakashi said in an effort to calm his pupil. Liar. However, it was at that moment that Kakashi became aware that one voice was absent from the typical accusations made during their daily greetings. When he opened the only eye he could see, Naruto was gone. Kakashi thought that was strange because Naruto usually arrived before most people and waited for Sakura. He did observe, however, that his team's balance had been off lately. Sakura had acted a little more violently than usual. Naruto had recently shown less interest in her, and Sasuke was primarily depressed with occasional outbursts of rage and anger during their spar. Well, strange. Where is Naruto now, I wonder? When he went to look into that mob yesterday, did something happen? Kakashi thought. Well, I suppose before we go to the tower for our mission, we should probably see where Naruto is at, right? When Sasuke finally said, the Dobi is probably sleeping in, like always. Yeah, it's not like he actually has done much for the team lately. He's always going off on his own trying to prove his worth to everyone, instead of actually doing what he is supposed to do, said Sakura. Thus, Team 7 headed for Naruto's apartment, with a mix of curiosity on Kakashi's part and annoyance on Sasuke and Sakura's. At the moment, Naruto and Hinata were seated at his kitchen table to eat. Naruto was seated, however, Hinata chose to stand because her wings made it extremely difficult for her to sit in a chair. Things had been pretty interesting so far. Even something as basic as moving around Naruto's apartment was a little challenging because of the size of the wings. Hinata had to wrap her wings around herself in order to go through the door properly. Naruto had to use his balcony yesterday to get her into his apartment in the first place, while Naruto took her hand and essentially escorted her to the living room. She unintentionally knocked several items off the wall when she tried to open them. Fortunately, Naruto laughed it off and showed a little more understanding than she had anticipated. They had just finished eating when the front door was knocked on. Naruto attempted to reassure Hinata that everything would be alright, but she appeared somewhat concerned. Don't worry, Hinata. I'm sure it's just Ba-chan coming in to check up on you, said Naruto. However, he was greeted by his own team as soon as he opened the door, with a furious Sakura in front of him who appeared prepared to murder Naruto. Sasuke seemed to be in the back feigning interest, while Kakashi had his standard Icha book out. Sakura started to say, Baka, what are you doing? But then she saw Hinata standing inside his apartment, seemingly sprouting wings out of her back. Sakura pointed accusingly at Hinata and yelled, "Ah! What in Kami-sama's name is this?" Sakura brushed past Naruto and went into the apartment, asking, "What kind of freak are you?" in an attempt to understand what was happening. Sasuke, who seemed to be curious about the reason behind his pink-haired teammates yelling, turned to see Hinata, who was now slinking down and trying to hide, verbally abusing someone. There was a mixture of confusion, disgust, and a strange longing in his expression. Just what the hell are you? No doubt you're not human, seeing as how typical human beings don't have wings growing out of their back. By this point, Naruto had stopped caring about his team and was not even listening to the taunts that Sakura directed at the former Hyuga. Naruto wasn't angry, he was livid. His teammates were making Hinata even more uncomfortable after breaking into his apartment and insulting his friend. When he turned to face Hinata, he saw that she was on the edge of tears and was pleading with Sakura to stop criticizing her appearance. He wasn't sure what it was, but at the moment he was fiercely protective of her. He was going to end this, whether it was because he didn't like to see his friend cry or because she was now an outcast like him. Whether they were teammates or not, Naruto's friends were never treated cruelly if he could avoid it. When Naruto finally had enough, he spoke in a voice that was both loud enough to be heard and cool enough to make Sasuke shudder. It was now the turn of the others to be startled. Get out now. When did Naruto start acting so irate? Hell, when did he start imposing his will on people? The only sensible answer Sakura could muster was, huh? Everyone noticed the missing chan suffix after her name and the rising volume of his voice as he said, "You heard me, Sakura. You too. Sasuke Teme, get out. Get out now. I don't care why you are here. I don't give a rat's ass why you think what you do about Hinata there. But I will be damned if I am going to sit here while you mistreat her in my home. You want answers? Go talk to Ba-chan about it. Until then, you are no longer welcome here. Either one of you. You understand me? Get out? Sakura and Sasuke quickly fled out the door past Kakashi because they didn't want to deal with an irate Naruto, but not before Sasuke made one final remark. Before Naruto could lose his temper, Sasuke said, "Well, I suppose freaks should stick together." Then, turning to face his sensei, Naruto glared at him so fiercely that Kabuto would have recoiled in terror. Kakashi just gave him a wave. Kakashi continued, "Oh, and Hinata," the young girl turning to face the Jonin. "Don't worry, Naruto, Hinata-san. Your secret is safe with me. I better go and track those two down before they try anything else." Then Kakashi went off to find his two other students. "I think they look good on you. I have seen plenty of unusual things in my life, so don't worry about me thinking any less of you, Yane," he said. After slamming the door behind him, Naruto approached Hinata and crouched down close to her. His response to his question, "Hey, are you alright?" was Hinata practically jumping into his arms and clinging to him while sobbing uncontrollably. As he guided her back to his bedroom so she could lie down for a while, Naruto did his best to console her. She had clearly been through a lot that morning, and her already fragile heart was likely broken by the harsh words Sasuke and Sakura had spoken. Although Naruto was unsure of the source of all this rage and frustration, it was obvious that he had no interest in interacting with anyone or anything that would treat Hinata like a second-class citizen like a good friend should. Naruto let Hinata cry and cling to him for the remainder of that morning. He kept his word from the previous evening. He was determined to stay with her no matter what. With the assistance of Shizune, who had at last caught up with the rest of Team 7, Kakashi had been able to locate his errant students following his unexpected encounter with Naruto and Hinata. Shizune had helped Kakashi bring his students under control before things got out of control by sharing what she knew about the situation. It goes without saying that Kakashi was somewhat taken aback by the news of the bashful Kunoichi. He would acknowledge that he was somewhat taken aback by Hinata's abrupt changes, but he wasn't nearly as taken aback as he had anticipated given his line of work. After all, you become numb to the quirks of the world after nearly 2 decades of being a shinobi. Kakashi led Sakura and Sasuke to his apartment for some privacy after deciding he needed to speak with Shizune and his students one-on-one. The apartment wasn't particularly fancy, but then, most shinobi apartments, especially those that were Jonin or higher, weren't particularly decorated. You only use your home to sleep 90% of the time, so why would you care about things like decorations or the like when you spend the majority of your time outside the village? With a reprimanding expression adorning his typically bored demeanor, Kakashi turned to Sakura and Sasuke after making sure to shut the door behind him and assisting Shizune in installing some privacy seals. "Okay. Do either of you mind telling me just what the hell all of that was about?" Kakashi said, "First off, I am ashamed at both of you for prying into someone else's business. Sakura, you should not have barged into Naruto's home uninvited. Whether or not you like it or not, it was his apartment, and even if you were teammates, there are still places that are private to even your team. I am sure you would not have appreciated it if we came barging into your home uninvited. Sasuke, whether or not you wish to acknowledge it, you are guilty of the same thing. Both of you disappointed me today." "But sensei, were we not supposed to get the Dobi out of his house? He was cutting into our training time, and we did waste time in trying to get him out. That was the whole reason we dragged our collective asses to his apartment to begin with," asked Sasuke. He was not particularly aware of their wrongdoing as his teammates. They had a right to know what was going on if Naruto was concealing something. "As true as that may be, Sasuke, everyone has a private space. The two of you violated that. Not only that, you insulted a guest." Sakura corrected him, "You mean freak," but Kakashi's death glare silenced her. "At any rate, you insulted a fellow comrade of the Leaf and brought a young woman who probably does not know what is going on with her right now to tears for something that she knows nothing about. The two of you also brought unwanted attention to Naruto-kun and Hinata-chan with your little outburst," Shizune said. "I was sent by Tsunade Shisho to inform all three of you that Naruto was going to be on an extended solo mission in the village for a while, but apparently you are not as patient as an outstanding shinobi should be now. As for what you saw, Lady Tsunade is already aware of the situation, and has declared it top secret until she says otherwise. That means that the two of you cannot tell anyone about what you just saw. Are we perfectly clear?" "But why? Shouldn't we?" "No, Sakura, as you both know, being a shinobi often means following direct orders and keeping secrets for your superior officers. If Tsunade-sama feels that it will be important for us to tell people, she will tell us. Until then, we are to keep our mouths shut, understood? I don't think I need to tell either of you the consequences of revealing top secret information to anyone, correct?" Because I will make sure that your punishments are carried out in full, Kakashi said. He had a point to make now. It was clear that Tsunade wanted to keep everything under wraps until more information was available to Jen, and talking about something that was top secret was the last thing that was needed at the moment. After receiving grudging and hesitant nods from Sakura and Sasuke, Kakashi and Shizune made the decision to take the two genin home in an effort to lessen the likelihood that they would be exposed to temptation. Tsunade's day was challenging after she hurried to Naruto's apartment. Naruto was determined not to let her in when she first tried to enter. He didn't let her in until he truly recognized her. Evidently, Naruto's group had already learned about Hinata while visiting to see how their teammate was doing. Tsunade was not pleased, as Naruto had informed her of everything that had happened between his team. She was still furious at Shizune's team's treatment of the winged kunoichi, even though she assumed he had not caught up to them in time. She went in to see how Hinata was doing after she had calmed down a little. Hinata was a wreck emotionally. She still had the traces of tears on her face, and her nerves were frayed. Tsunade thought that her already brittle mental state had been harmed by hearing such nasty taunts. Tsunade gave her a clean bill of health, but since Naruto was now unusually tense and she didn't want to take the chance that he might attack the next person to knock on his door, she chose to stay and wait for the teams she sent out to arrive. Team 8 was the first to show up. They were astonished by Hinata's new look, as was to be expected, but unfazed. Being his typically stoic self, Shino dismissed it as just another characteristic that set Hinata apart as the team's big brother. Kiba made a joke about Hinata looking like an enormous owl with the wings added. Hinata giggled at that remark, but Shino and Naruto gave her a fist to the head. It was unclear to everyone whether the giggle was brought on by Kiba's joke or the slapstick humor. As the mother figure in Hinata's life, Kurenai did the most basic thing. She hugged Hinata, though it was a little harder now that the wings were in the way to release some of her tension. Hinata just sobbed into her sensei's uniform. Everyone was aware that Hinata most likely needed this very much, to know that there were people who still loved her in spite of the fact that she was now even more different from everyone else than before. Although he was still unsure of the reason behind his intense protectiveness, Naruto was relieved that her team had been so open to accepting her. However, Naruto didn't want to take any chances following the events involving his own team. In relation to his team, Naruto started to question when Hinata surpassed them in importance. He was aware that he shouldn't have been so upset with them, but it seemed like everyone had been irritable lately. In addition to being even more annoying than usual, Sasuke had also stopped thinking about the girl with the pink hair as much as he usually did. Maybe he was just getting over a phase, but he was beginning to notice the flaws in his makeshift family. He had considered Team 7 to be a dysfunctional family for some time. However, Naruto had started to see Sasuke as the dark person that he was after meeting the Akatsuki members Itachi Uchiha, Sasuke's older brother, and Kisame Hoshigaki, also known as the monster of the hidden mist. He also started to see Sakura as a painful reminder of how cruel people can be to the strange and unusual. The rest of Team 8 took their leave and went home after attempting to locate locations for Hinata's belongings, which took some time because they needed to find a place for both Hinata's and Naruto's belongings. They made a commitment to try to visit Hinata whenever they could. Team guys showed up at Naruto's house around 2 hours after they departed. Naruto was nervous about allowing them to see Hinata, as was to be expected, but Tsunade convinced him that it wouldn't hurt. Neji asked to see his cousin after assisting with the grocery storage that Guy and his group had brought. Thus, the 4-member squad was escorted to the bedroom where, depending on your perspective, Hinata was currently hiding or residing. The response from Lee and Guy was immediate. After glancing at Hinata, they both struck a friendly pose. Then they got into a heated argument about how beautiful Hinata was and how the wings only made her look younger. This made everyone perspire. It was almost expected that those as suspiciously unstable as Guy and Lee would find it easy to look at Hinata and see nothing wrong with her when she was able to adjust to her new features. They even offered to let her use their dojo in order to facilitate training in the Goken Taijutsu style, which required a fair amount of height to achieve maximum efficiency. Their dojo had a high ceiling. Tenten approached the girl warily and initially appeared nervous. From what she could see, Hinata had not changed physically aside from the wings, so she wasn't particularly afraid of her. However, she was unaware of the extent to which this recent development had altered her personality. Tenten attempted to greet her fellow genin kunoichi, but she decided to just let things be as they were. Tenten cautiously said, "So, how is it going, Hinata-san?" Hinata looked at Tenten anxiously and analytically. Hinata could sense Tenten was nervous about something, but she was unable to pinpoint it right away. Hinata made the decision to just be herself in the hopes that Tenten would feel less anxious. I'm fine, Tenten-san. How are you?" Tenten sighed inwardly. Despite the short time she had known Hinata, she was aware of her tendency toward shyness and anxiety. She was relieved that, Despite a few changes, Hinata was still the same person after this experience. However, she made the decision to express regret for her actions. "Sorry about that, Hinata, I just wasn't expecting this and I just wanted to make sure you were still, you." Hinata gave a nod. At least the bun-haired brunette had been honest with her. Neji arrived at last. He was still sporting the stoic expression that is characteristic of a Hyuga. He approached Hinata, who was seated there, when Naruto noticed that she was growing increasingly apprehensive around her cousin. He attempted to approach her, but Tsunade intervened, given that he was from the same clan that expelled Hinata in the first place and that he had last seen her interact with Neji during the Chunin exams. He was still afraid of what he might do to her, but he reluctantly agreed after she gave him a look that told him to trust her judgment. Neji walked over to his cousin and studied her. She had told him during the Chunin exams that she could see how he was struggling with what he believed to be his destiny, and the wings he saw brought back memories of those words. It seemed as though someone was now telling him that Hinata's future was far more important than his teachings on fate and destiny. A few months ago, he might have behaved like the rest of his clansmen and just expressed his hatred for her if he had witnessed what he was seeing now. He could now see Hinata's fear, and for the first time, it made him feel evil rather than justified. He knelt next to Hinata and gave her a direct look. She was silently pleading with him not to reject her like the rest of her family, and he could see the mixed feelings in her eyes. Neji said, "Hinata-sama, first, I am not going to even pretend that I know of the kind of suffering that you are going through, but rest assured that, while you may not have ties to the clan any longer, you are still my cousin in blood, and blood is still thicker than water." He grinned slightly. Hinata glanced at her cousin with relief, then stammered out a brief, "Thank you." She was worried that her cousin might share the same mindset as the rest of her family because she was aware of the beliefs in her clan regarding other Kekkei Genkai. The fact that at least one member of her former family still loved her and didn't mind who she had changed gave her comfort. Nobody was quite prepared for her to embrace Neji, but to everyone's surprise, he did the same. The other members of Team Guy left after mocking Mr. Ice's bleeding heart and his softening, promising to keep their mouths shut. None of the individuals exiting the apartment noticed the gray eyes that seemed to disappear into the evening. To report to Hiashi and the other elders on the Hyuga Council, a branch member came into the chambers. The council, which had the same number of members so that the clan head would always have the final say in matters pertaining to the clan, was tasked with advising the current head of the clan on how to run the family. There were 4 men and 4 women on the council. Because of her progressive views on the family, Mo Hyuga, who was relatively young, she was in her late 40s, was frequently outvoted on the council. She was somewhat of an outsider in the clan because of her beliefs. Mo was one of the few people that held Hinata in high regard, mostly due to her being an outcast like her. Despite his natural strength, Mo chose to be non-violent. Katona, Mo's married sister, was viewed as the family's idealist. She rarely saw any issues and, in order to stay out of trouble, she just followed everyone else's advice. She didn't really care about Hinata in any way. She didn't care as long as everyone got along. As the oldest woman on the council, Yui had witnessed the clan's expansion over many generations prior to this incident with Hinata. She, like the late Hiruzen Sarutobi, had been looking forward to retiring into her golden years without much difficulty. She had lived through the Second and Third Great Shinobi World Wars. She was left to belittle the young girl for her own trivial reasons and for her newly discovered skills. The final member of the council's female side was Sake. She received a seat on the council for her service to her village after being hurt on a mission during the Yondaime Hokage's 4-year rule. She had defended her clan's home during the Sound Invasion and was still strong for her age. Even though she was unable to serve as a ninja on active duty, she was still capable of fighting alongside the best. The only reason she was against Hinata was that she didn't measure up to the rest of the clan's expectations. The idea to send Hisashi, Haishi's twin brother, to Kumogakure no Sato as restitution for killing their ninja during the peace talks between the two villages 10 years prior was suggested by Miki, who was by far the oldest member of the male side of the council. In order to preserve the Hyuga clan, he would do whatever it took, even if it meant acting unethically. Since Hinata was perceived as a threat, he would not be above merely destroying her. As implied by his name, Norio was a man of principles. Granted, his principles were based on the clan's power, but he saw that as unimportant since his clan was now the most powerful in the village. He detested Hinata's pacifist nature. Her new appendages appeared to support his theory, and her lack of a backbone led him to dismiss her as a mistake. Similar to how Mo was viewed as an anomaly on the female side of the council, Hiramasa was the odd man out on the male side. The fact that Mo had been his wife for 20 years didn't help. Some of the Hyuga ideals, in his opinion, were out of date and simply terrible. There was more to being a leader than being the strongest or the purest, and he strongly objected to the branch house's seal being used. There would be no need for the houses to be divided or for members of the same family to despise one another for reasons that are out of their control if everything were conducted the way he desired. The final member of the council's male side was Fuyu. He was regarded as the master of the emotionless no-like mask that the clan had become accustomed to seeing from all of its Hyuga. Some people thought that he actually had his face frozen in that position because it was said that he ate, bathed, trained, and even slept with the same expression on his face. The man was annoyed that Hinata had never been able to wear a mask like that and felt that she ought to have been branded and exiled long ago. Hiashi made the decision to begin the meeting as the branch member was leaving. So, it may be that we have found Hinata after all. Of course, having that whore of a cage near her makes things more difficult now. Norio looked at Hiashi curiously. So, what is to stop us? All we would have to do is sneak in, kill her and that idiot that made a mockery of us, and leave before anyone else finds out, or, at the very least we could brand her and then kill her from a distance before anyone could find out. Fuyu looked at Norio sternly. You fool. If we do that, they will know that it is us that did it. While I may not like it, as long as she is under that brat's protection, she is under the protection of the Hokage as well. If we strike now, we will cause an uproar that we don't want to deal with just yet. Sake said, I agree. What we need to do is to simply wait to catch her alone, and then we can do away with that little mistake. Mo's husband agreed when she said, but wouldn't that be counterproductive? I mean, she is already out of our hands, so what more harm can Hinata do to us? Don't you fools get it? If we allow her to live, not only do we run the risk that someone will obtain the Byakugan and learn its secrets, we also run the risk of her having offspring later on and intermixing with us, further weakening our dojutsu. There is simply too much at stake to let her live. She is a liability, Mickey yelled. Agreed. So, I propose a solution. We wait until we can have an opportunity to catch her when she is unguarded, and then we strike, Hiashi suggested. Sake and Yui inquired, and if anyone gets in the way? With a frown, Hiashi concluded, simple, anyone that gets in the way of our business will be eliminated. Nobody would stop them from correcting this error. Guy and the rest of Neji's team left, and Tsunade and Neji sat at the kitchen table with Naruto and Hinata. As soon as it was established that they were alone, Tsunade produced a black file bearing Hinata's name. Hinata, from what Neji here has told me, this file belongs to you, as it has a blood seal on it that only you can open. This file may contain information explaining what is going on, so I thought you might want to open it and find out if there is more about your wings. After giving a nod, Hinata pricked her thumb to extract enough blood to activate the seal. The seal did indeed come undone and open for her when she added chakra. After dropping the blood on it, there was a diary with the initials SH written on it, an envelope, some pictures, and other random objects that Hinata was certain were destroyed when her mother passed away. Hinata chose the envelope because she wasn't sure where to begin. Hinata started reading the letter that was inside. Loved one, Hinata-chan. It indicates that I am no longer with you if you are reading this letter. For that, I am so sorry. I made every effort to keep my secret as long as possible, but I doubt I will be able to do so for very long. That is why I am writing this letter to you now, in the hopes that you will forgive me for leaving you and your sister, knowing that you may have inherited multiple Kekkei Genkai. This letter is being written as you read it. You inherited the Byakugan from your father. If my suspicions are right, you also might have inherited my Kekkei Genkai. The Guardian's Wings is the name of it. It is not a particularly well-known bloodline, and I was reportedly the last person in the clan that it originated from. As far as I'm aware, that clan doesn't have any other members, and its name has been lost to time. You should be aware of a few things I know about the Guardian's Wings. First, if everything goes according to plan, the awakening process should be fairly painless. There will be a surge of energy emanating from your back around the age of 15. I have put a seal on you that will only become visible if you apply chakra directly to it. Your Kekkei Genkai won't activate too soon because of that seal, although you will still require rest to allow your body to acclimate to the additions that your bloodline will have. The chakra in the seal is made to ensure that you don't have to worry about depleting your energy to speed up your growth. The reason the seal takes so long to activate is because your body will need time to adjust appropriately. However, applying chakra directly too soon and in too much will not only make it more painful for you, but it will also drain you more and speed up the process. This will cause you to painfully awaken your bloodline too quickly. Second, as you have probably seen, you grow a pair of wings. These are for more than just decoration. You can actually use these to fly. Although it might take some time for you to learn how to fly, I have no doubt that you will eventually figure it out. Another option is to harden your wings into a shield to protect you, but doing so will make them too heavy for you to fly. That won't really matter, though, because you'll probably only use this when you have to engage in close combat. Additionally, the wings feature owl-like feathers. This will ensure that you remain silent while flying, quite a distinctive feature, isn't it? In order to blend in with the crowd, you will also grow slits in your back that will enable your wings to fold into your body. Fortunately, Anyone feeling your back won't be able to detect the slits because they can close so tightly. Lastly, the user gains an affinity for wind thanks to the Guardian's wings. In addition to the standard chakra, there are 5 main elements: earth, fire, lightning, water, and wind. As you may already be aware, in addition to the element you were born with, this bloodline will give you a wind element, which you can use to create new elements. For example, you could probably combine wind and earth to create the dust release if you had this bloodline and an affinity for earth. I wish I could do so much with you, Hinata, and tell you so much. You will make me proud. I know that deep down you probably already have. I am not sure if I will be there for you, however, because of the bigotry of the Hyuga clan. They will see your wings as an abomination. My daughter, know that you are valuable to me and that I will always love you, even if I die. No one should ever tell you that you are worthless. All forms of life are worthy of being given a chance. No matter what you do in life, your kindness and love will make you a wonderful person. My daughter, express your love for your sister and your desire to have stayed so she could have the mother she deserves. Please know that I didn't mean to hurt you both in any way right now. All I ask of you is to accept who you are. I will always love you because you will always be my daughters. With an unimaginable amount of love, Hyuga Sango. P.S. If you find someone you love, tell them that's the final piece of motherly advice. It is their loss if they are going to turn you down. People who see you for who you are, not for your title, your family name, or the blood that runs through your veins, are the ones who are worth your time, you'll discover. After setting the letter aside, Hinata sobbed into Naruto's shoulder. Although she knew it was now impossible, she longed to see her mother and tell her that she had forgiven her. The young woman had experienced so many different emotions after reading that letter that she was at a loss for what to feel for his part. Naruto was perplexed. Tsunade appeared to be thinking deeply, while Neji appeared to be wearing a frustrated expression. So, why is it that the Hyuga don't like other Kekkei Genkei? I mean, wouldn't having another bloodline make you guys more powerful or something? He inquired. Neji was the one who responded to Naruto's query. If the Hyuga solely valued power like the Uchiha did, that might be the case. However, in my clan, it is purity of blood that is considered paramount. Ever since a branch member of the clan was born with the bloodline that would later become the Sharingan, that member was later banished for defiling the Byakugan with his mutation. The Hyuga have feared that other bloodlines could create a mutation like the Sharingan that could lead to tainting the Byakugan. That is why it is rare for a Hyuga to marry someone from another clan. The fear of what could happen to the Byakugan is simply too great. What? That's so stupid. That's the dumbest thing I have ever heard of. You are not the only one that thinks so, Naruto, Neji said. Many of us feel that the fear of tainting the Byakugan is nothing more than the fears of an older generation that dislikes change, but the stigma still stands. Unfortunately, this now makes things more difficult for Hinata-sama. Tsunade said. What do you mean, Neji? Well, since Hinata does not have the seal on her forehead, I can assume that the clan was fairly quick in Hinata-sama's banishment. If they realize that she is still alive, they will probably not stop until they succeed in eliminating Hinata-sama. They will not simply let her walk away with the Byakugan even if it is tainted in the past. If someone was born with another ability or bloodline other than the Byakugan, that person's parents were killed and every child would be eliminated so as to not ruin the clan's reputation. His eyes widened in disbelief. If that is the case, they may mean that Hanabi-sama could also be at risk if she possibly inherited this bloodline as well. Hinata opened her eyes in astonishment. She had completely forgotten about Hanabi. Her life might be in jeopardy if she shared this bloodline. It seemed like Hinata was solely to blame for this entire circumstance. None of this would have occurred if she hadn't developed these wings. All she could hope for was that her sister would be spared and not have to endure what she had. Tsunade thought this was bad. If all of this was true, Hinata would have issues with the council as well as her old clan in the near future. Those who wish to create a group of flying ninjas would undoubtedly want to use Hinata as breeding stock. Just as Kumo did 10 years ago, things were going to get pretty tough for a while because of that and the danger to Hanabi. Naruto made the decision to express his opinions before anyone else could freak out. Everyone looked at him and said, I won't let that happen. I won't let them do that to Hinata. So what if she has the Guardian's wings and the Byakugan? So what if she isn't completely untainted like they want? I will not let them hurt her, no matter what. I will protect her with my life and find a way to help her sister if she awakens the Guardian's wings. Those bastards won't lay a hand on her. I promise that on my dream to be Hokage. Datbeo. At his declaration, Hinata flushed scarlet and felt relieved. If Naruto was prepared to take such a big risk for her, then she felt so important to him. He seemed to genuinely care about her, treating her as more than just a friend. Neji couldn't resist grinning. Leave it to Naruto to bite off more than he can chew. That's all well and good, Naruto, but I have to ask if you think that you will be able to handle this. Tsunade said, we are discussing the Hyuga clan here, and even though they do not legally have any authority over Hinata, I would not rule out them trying something if the chance arose. Don't worry, Ba-chan. I'm capable, all right, said Tsunade with a smile, but I'm going to get you some help. Only people we fully trust will be invited, and we will keep the circle small. To ensure that you can keep her safe, we will change up the schedule so that nobody suspects anything. She turned to Neji and said, I would like you to keep me as informed as you can about the Hyuga in the interim. Neji, we will probably have Kurenai and her team here once in a while to make sure that you are all fine. Additionally, you might want to make sure that you monitor Hanabi. We might have to remove her from Hyuga custody in order to protect her if she exhibits any indications of this bloodline. Once their plans were complete, the Hokage and Neji left Hinata and Naruto to tidy the apartment before going to bed. Hinata had been living with Naruto for a week, and things were going quite nicely as she adapted to her new wings. Fortunately, her body adjusted to her new wings completely in just 1 week. To Hinata's relief, the flaps that were designed to store her wings were finally sufficiently developed to enable her to fold them in, and her chakra system was completely modified to account for the additional appendages. In private, Hinata explained that she wanted to tell Naruto how she felt about him and that the only way she felt she would have the courage to do so was if she continued to get to know him, which she could do best if she stayed with him. Kurenai offered to let Hinata stay with her now that she could conceal her wings. Kurenai grudgingly accepted Hinata's choice to remain with Naruto, but she also informed Hinata that if she needed someone with 2 X chromosomes to talk to, she could come talk to her at any time. Hinata started attempting to reintegrate into society as soon as she could. She was still able to cover herself with a jacket to avoid feeling too exposed, even though some of her clothing, mostly her shirts, had been altered to provide access to her wings. When the villagers first saw the former heiress with the village outcast, their reactions were mixed. Some seemed to give her angry looks, and Naruto recognized some of them as members of the group that had harassed her when he discovered her. Others expressed distaste for someone like her spending time with the demon, but they were afraid to speak up for fear of reprisals. Still others just raised an eyebrow, given that the former heiress had not been seen for a week. Since the Hyuga clan is known for keeping family affairs inside the compound's boundaries, no one had yet to learn of her exile. The majority of the villagers mostly ignored her. They had no responsibility because they had no business knowing who she spent time with. Training with the additional limbs of her new bloodline was among the first things Hinata did after spending so much time confined to her home. As promised, Lee and Guy gave Hinata access to their dojo so she could acclimate to her new wings. Fortunately, Naruto had been there to support her and encourage her to give it her all while also helping her feel less anxious in public and around other people. After 2 days of falling on her butt and almost hitting her head, which she avoided because Naruto caught her in time, she was able to fly just as well as any bird in the sky. The feathers flapped silently, letting her soar through the air as her mother had described in the letter. To her increasing delight and excitement, she even performed some acrobatics while in the air. She was thrilled each time she raised herself into the air. Along with a crash course in flying, Hinata started elemental training, a level of training typically reserved for ninja at the Chunin level or above, though it is not impossible for genin to try. After testing Hinata, Kurenai discovered that she had 2 affinities. Hinata had an affinity for both wind and lightning, as evidenced by the paper she used to test her affinities splitting in half before crumpling. They decided to wait to try combining the elements because no one had ever had those 2 affinities at the same time before. They tentatively called the combination of wind and lighting the hurricane release. Since both lightning and wind were relatively uncommon elements, it was decided to seek outside assistance for Hinata. It was determined to seek assistance from Tsunade no Sato, specifically from Temari and Gaara no Sabaku, since there was only one known wind affinity in the village, and that was Asuma Sarutobi. Since their village still needed to be reorganized following the discovery of the 4th Kage's bodies, Konoha was informed that Temari, Gaara, and their brother Kankuro would be able to assist, but they would first need to attend to some business in Suna. Asuma and Team 10 were assisting Hinata with her new skills in Guy's dojo. Until that point, they made the decision to postpone the lightning training until after she had mastered wind. Hinata was initially perplexed as to why Team 10 was with Asuma, but she soon came to the conclusion that, should Asuma be compelled to assist her in some way, they most likely lacked another team leader at the moment. After all, Konoha needed all the assistance they could get given the current shinobi shortage. It would be impossible to assign a ninja like Asuma at random and not anticipate consequences. She was therefore compelled to show her new additions to Shikamaru, Shoji, and Ino. Ino was astonished and on the verge of fainting, but more from awe than from fear. The rotund ninja seldom spoke of anything but food, so Choji found Hinata's appearance to be quite impressive. Shikamaru gave the most expected response, dismissing the entire situation as troublesome. He was implying that he was in favor of people but was simply too lazy to think of anything constructive to say. For young Hinata, things were looking pretty good overall, but one of Konoha's most difficult to keep secrets was about to be revealed to her. October 10th was the date Hinata had woken up to an empty bedroom, but before she could panic, she heard the telltale signs of a kettle on the stove, signaling that Naruto was cooking breakfast. Hinata got out of bed, slipped on some casual clothing. There was no training today due to the fact that the date was considered a day of mourning, and went out into the kitchen. She observed Naruto preparing oyakodon, a dish made with white rice, eggs, and simmered chicken. On a kitchen top, Hinata reminded herself that if she didn't thank Lady Tsunade for getting Naruto a cookbook, breakfast, lunch, and dinner would consist of ramen. Meanwhile, Naruto had been up for several hours. Unless he had a mission or training, he usually waited until much later to get out of bed on this date. This was a day of mourning for the majority of Konoha residents. Although Naruto was aware that today was also his birthday, he never felt particularly inclined to celebrate because doing so would essentially amount to spitting on the tragedy that had occurred. It's true that he was mostly ignored, but on his birthday, he did act violently twice. A group of children from the orphanage got together to play violent games with Naruto on his 4th birthday, most of which involved using him as a punching bag. When a group of 8 genin and 6 chunin saw him on his 7th birthday, they snapped. It seemed reasonable for them to vent their resentment on its prison because, apparently, the great majority of them had lost their families in the Kyuubi attack at that point. He needed to be saved by an Anbu squad. Since then, Naruto has simply stopped commemorating his birth date, along with a covert ritual that he never shared with anyone outside of the 3rd Hokage. However, he woke up early today for 2 reasons. In the first place, he was aware that he had to prepare Hinata's breakfast and that he would not benefit from avoiding cooking because of his personal suffering. The fox in Naruto's seal was conversing with him, which was another factor. The fox apparently thought that communicating with its prisoner would increase its chances of surviving the battle with Kabuto. The fox said, "Kid, we need to talk," while Naruto was preparing breakfast. "Kyuubi Teme, what do you want this time? Are you here today to boast about your accomplishments from 13 years ago?" Naruto inquired. For his part, he had no desire to amuse himself with the fox's sadistic humor. "You are an insignificant little runt. As if I would gloat over the pointless destruction of your puny little village. No. I simply wish to ask when you were planning to tell that vixen of yours about us. To begin with, she is simply a good friend and not my vixen, or whatever the hell you are calling her. And second, why is it important to you? Giant demon foxes don't give a damn about the private lives of people they consider inferior. As far as I can tell, why should I tell her that you are important to you? Listen, kid. For better or worse, your life and mine are tied together. That means that if you die, then I die with you. That being said, if I am going to spend the rest of my days trapped inside this cage, I might as well make sure that my container stays somewhat content. Besides, I do not want a brooding, depressed, and suicidal child as a container. I refuse to listen to you wallow in your own self-pity, whether you wish to acknowledge that side of you or not." Kyuubi replied. The fox wasn't particularly concerned with the private issues in its prison, but if sharing its existence meant that someone else would be willing to keep Naruto alive, then it wasn't going to argue about getting involved in Naruto's private life. After a moment of silence, Naruto answered, "I can't harm her like that. She will leave like everyone else if she finds out. She has no reason to remain here other than to keep her here while she adapted to her Kekkei Genkei. If she didn't find out, it would be better for her." Kyuubi shot back, "You know she will find out sooner or later, kid. One way or another, she will figure things out. I have a feeling that the shadow user friend of yours already suspects something, and the male you fought before you fought the container of the Ichibi no Shukaku attacked already saw my chakra flowing through you. If they haven't figured it out yet, they will in any event. Would it not sound better coming from you rather than from a villager?" Kyuubi had a point, and Naruto understood it. Everyone was going to learn that he was a Jinchuriki sooner or later. It would be a group like the Akatsuki to reveal his secret if they didn't figure it out on their own. The thought of people's reactions frightened him, but he knew he couldn't keep his secret indefinitely. He was just too vulnerable during the Chunin exams, and everyone had witnessed him using the demon fox's chakra. "Okay, I'll let her know. I will blame you if she later hates me, just so you know." Before Naruto could scold him for claiming Hinata as his vixen, Kyuubi cut off his connection, saying, "That's fair enough. I suppose it is not as if you haven't blamed me for everything else in your pathetic life. Now, you might want to pay attention to what you are doing, because I think I hear your vixen entering the kitchen." Hinata entered the kitchen to find Naruto in a daze, as if he had been in a trance or deep thought. She wasn't sure why, but when she saw Naruto in that state, she felt apprehensive, as though he were concealing something from her. Not that she could claim that she needed to know. Despite how close they had gotten in a week's time, there were still aspects of Naruto's life that she didn't pry into because she knew that everyone had a right to keep their own secrets. She was aware that she had not shared much of her life in the Hyuga compound with Naruto, primarily because she found it difficult to discuss some of the events that occurred in her former residence. She chose to ask Naruto about it over breakfast because she couldn't get rid of the feeling that this was truly upsetting him. Naruto-kun, is everything alright? You've been really quiet today, replied Hinata. Naruto smiled at her, but it was not quite loud enough for him to hear. What do you mean, Hinata? I'm fine, really. Hinata gave a headshake. I can tell why you were lying. Naruto-kun, won't you tell me what is bothering you? Naruto's smile faded to that of an elderly, weary person. I just have some stuff to do today, that's all. I just didn't want to worry you. He didn't want to begin the day with a confession about his tenant, but it wasn't the whole truth. Well, is there any way I can help you today? Naruto gave a shrug. If you don't have anything else to do today, I guess it would be nice to have some company. Usually, I just spend this day alone. I just figured you would want to be with some other people today, mourning your loved ones. I don't know anyone that died today. Naruto-kun, if you want company, I would be honored to go with you. Hinata continued to speak. Naruto nodded in agreement after appearing to think about it for a while, since he didn't want to leave her alone anyhow and he might as well reveal his secret to her while he was engaged in his yearly ritual. He was actually going to ask her anyhow. Thus, Naruto and Hinata departed for the day after tidying up his mess and making sure his house was locked. The Yamanaka flower shop was Naruto and Hinata's first destination that day. Hinata was initially taken aback by this. Why would Naruto need to purchase flowers when, as far as she knew, he was an orphan? Inoichi Yamanaka, who was operating the store today in lieu of his daughter, who was out having a peaceful afternoon with her teammates, welcomed them as they entered. Inoichi owned the flower shop and was the leader of the Yamanaka clan. Inoichi was one of the few people in the village who did not despise Naruto, despite what the general public believed. He had checked Naruto's mental state when he was young by performing a mind transfer, and he immediately discovered that Naruto and the Kyuubi no Yoko were two different entities. Inoichi had been largely uninterested in Naruto ever since, although he did acknowledge that Naruto was carrying the weight. What it must have been like for someone else to be carrying his burden was beyond Inoichi's comprehension. Inoichi would always imagine what it would be like if his own daughter, Ino, or one of his friend's children, Shikamaru or Choji, were used in place of Naruto. Whenever he felt that he was just a troublemaker or unworthy of his time, knowing that his child had been spared, even at the expense of another's child, humbled the head of the blonde clan. With a smile on his face, Inoichi welcomed the two genin. Welcome to the Yamanaka flower shop. What can I do for you today, Naruto? Neither of the two people who were in the store failed to notice Naruto's serious expression. Inoichi-san, do you happen to have any leftover white lilies left? There is someone that I need to pay my respects to today? Inoichi's smile faded into a perceptive expression. Of course, wait here and I will get some from the greenhouse out back. Naruto was gazing off into space when Hinata gave him a curious glance. To the best of her knowledge, Naruto had no family members that he knew about. In regards to Naruto's family, she had overheard his conversations with other people. Based on her understanding, Naruto was unaware of his parents' identities or any other family members. Is he planning to pay his respects to the third Hokage at the Memorial Stone? It made sense because she was aware of the close relationship between Naruto and the third Hokage, but why, of all days, would Naruto only come today? Hinata's curiosity about what they were doing today grew as she gave it more thought. After Inoichi returned with a bunch of white lilies, Naruto paid for them and he and Hinata went to Ichiraku Ramen for a quick lunch before continuing on to their destination. Hinata was a little taken aback when Naruto and she headed toward the cemetery instead of the Memorial Stone as she had initially anticipated. Although Hinata didn't understand why they were going there, she chose to remain silent until Naruto felt more at ease explaining their purpose. As they moved toward the rear of the cemetery, they passed the square memorials and inscriptions of numerous shinobi who had perished in the Kyuubi attack or in previous conflicts in which Konoha had participated. When they eventually came to a halt at one of the grave sites, Naruto laid the lilies on the grave and then gazed at the stone. As if having a private discussion with the deceased, Hinata suppressed a gasp when she saw the name written on the stone. Uzumaki Kushina 4X was born on July 10th and passed away on October 10th. Best friend, talented kunoichi, and devoted mother. May the memories of those who knew the red-hot-blooded habanero endure. Hinata turned and saw Naruto, who appeared even more depressed than when she had last seen him at the funeral of the third Hokage. Before she could ask him who this person was, Naruto started talking, and she was shocked by what she said. In case you were wondering, Hinata, this is my mother's grave. Apparently, she died the night of the attack of the Kyuubi no Yoko. I didn't know about this place until my 8th birthday. Gigi took me to her grave because I had told him that I wished I had someone to mourn, you know. Before I found this place, I thought my parents abandoned me, but then he showed me this grave, and in a weird sense, I guess it gives me some form of closure. He told me that she died when the Kyuubi launched an attack that hit the part of the hospital, which apparently was the side that she was in when she gave birth to me. Well, at least I know that she didn't abandon me. The discovery of Naruto's birth date as well as the identity of the person buried there astounded Hinata. Although she was aware that he never celebrated his birthday, she was unaware that it was on a day of mourning. Even though it was a tragic day like today, she had a hunch that Naruto must have found it difficult to be alone on what should have been a happy day for any child. Although there were a few people who at least wished her a happy birthday each year back in her former home, she couldn't even begin to imagine what that might have been like. She could finally see tears streaming down Naruto's tanned, whiskered cheeks as she processed what he had told her. Naruto started over, his voice stuttering as he struggled to suppress the fear and guilt he was feeling. It sounds stupid, but I can't help but feel that I am responsible for her death. For real? Hinata asked. Why do you blame yourself, Naruto-kun? She found it incomprehensible that a day-old could be held accountable for a death brought on by the Kyuubi attack. Naruto turned to face her, his eyes glimmering with fear and his face utterly pitiful. Hinata, what I am about to tell you is considered an S-class secret in the village, and only myself and the Hokage are allowed to reveal it, so you can't tell anyone that doesn't already know. If it's okay, could you wait to ask any more questions until I am done? He went on after Hinata nodded. At this point, Naruto pointed to a seal on his stomach, which he revealed after focusing his chakra on it. What we have been told about the Kyuubi's defeat is a lie. The Yondaime Hokage had to find another way to defeat the fox because he couldn't kill something as powerful as the Kyuubi. When I was born, the Yondaime took me from my mother, confronted the fox, and sealed him within me. That is the reason most of the village hates me. I feel that, if I was not alive, then justice would finally be served, and my mother could rest in peace. Not to mention, most of the village populace would probably be able to have closure for their loved ones' deaths instead of continually mourning. Knowing that the very beast that killed their loved ones lives on inside of me, I can understand if you want to go live with Kurenai-sensei now. If you want, I can help you move out tonight, seeing as how you probably don't want to live under the same roof as the prison of the damn fox. After discovering that the Kyuubi had been sealed inside Naruto, Hinata went through phases of shock. Rage at the 4th Hokage for condemning him to his life, empathy for Naruto, and fear that she might be expelled because Naruto would believe she detested him. Although she had only been an outcast for a short time, she was unaware of the burden Naruto was carrying. The thought of having to bear the monster that plagued many Konoha residents as nightmares was too much to bear. Everything that had previously made no sense to her, the villagers' hateful glares, the secondary chakra she witnessed Naruto using against Neji, and the absence of a celebration for Naruto's birthday, now made perfect sense. She was still annoyed by the village's blatant ignorance despite the fact that it clarified a lot about how people had treated him. How could the fox's actions be attributed to Naruto? How could he be held responsible for something that was out of his control? She simply gathered Naruto in her tender embrace. After forcing herself to stop thinking for once, she didn't stutter and spoke with all the resolve she could muster. Naruto-kun, I cannot even begin to imagine what you have gone through, but none of this is your fault. You didn't choose this burden. You didn't choose to hold the beast that attacked our village. If anything, you are the reason we are all still alive, and the fact that you haven't died yet because of all of this shows that you are an even stronger person than I first thought, and that makes me admire you more. Plus, between you and me, I would be willing to bet on our Nindo that your mother would be proud of you and what you have accomplished, and she would not want you to blame yourself for her death. The fox was the one that killed your mother, not you, Naruto-kun. As for being scared, just because you put something in a box, doesn't mean that the box becomes whatever you put into it. That was the last straw. Naruto was unable to control the flood of tears he had been fighting so hard to contain. All of his worries about Hinata's reaction, her reaction to learning about his burden, and his life vanished. The only thing he could do was weep into his loved one's shoulder and keep crying, wondering why he had been picked for this and why no one else could see him without seeing the fox. Although Hinata had no solutions, she was prepared to hear his annoyances. Although she was reminded of her mother's counsel to express your feelings to the person you love, she chose to put it off for the time being. Trying to tell him now didn't seem right. She would wait for a more favorable moment and proceed according to her own schedule. After crying for a while, Naruto eventually ran out of tears to shed. He sniffled to try and gain some form of composure. Thank you, Hinata. I know that I must look pretty weak to you now, but I feel better sharing all of this with someone. Why, you're welcome. Naruto-kun, you know that I am always willing to be here for you if anything. I should thank you for being willing to share your burden with me, she said with a slight but sorrowful grin. If you want, I don't think Kurenai-sensei would mind allowing us to join her for dinner, if you want. Not quite believing his voice at the moment, Naruto just nodded. He had at last discovered a friend who was willing to keep his secrets and who had been able to accept him for who he was. He had only ever dreamed of such a friendship, and he had at last found someone who could ease the suffering and guilt he had been carrying around for so long. Naruto guided Hinata out of the cemetery and toward Kurenai's home while keeping that in mind. A certain Jonin landed where the two were standing, but neither teen saw it. After seeing how Naruto and Hinata interacted, Kakashi couldn't help but smile. The fact that Hinata was prepared to take on Naruto's burden pleased him. Kakashi was concerned about the possible outcomes if Hinata had not handled the disclosure of Naruto's secrets with grace. He was pleased that Hinata had become Naruto's true friend. He turned to the grave and sighed quietly. I sincerely wish Minato-sensei had made more plans for your son, and I wish I had played a larger role in his life. Kushina-san, I sincerely hope you continue to watch him from wherever you are and that you are proud of him. I now swear that I will make an effort to teach him better than I have. With that, Kakashi vanished in a whirl of leaves, leaving a red-dyed lily on her grave. I hope you will find peace now that Naruto has found someone to treasure. It had been 2 weeks since Naruto had told Hinata that he was the nine-tailed demon fox's container. The two have remained friends ever since the revelation. Hinata was growing more self-assured around Naruto, and Naruto was growing more at ease having her live in his rather tiny apartment. They had started talking about their past experiences more and more. Hinata would share some of her experiences as a member of the Hyuga clan, while Naruto would share some of his more complex antics and encounters with different shinobi from the village. Hinata shared Naruto's opinion that some of her clan's beliefs were a little strange, so everything was fine. Hinata's training was going well, too. She was now proficient in wind chakra to the point where she could execute C-ranked wind techniques with ease and, with enough effort, B-ranked techniques. In order to use her lightning chakra in tandem with her wind chakra, Hinata had started learning how to use it. In addition to requiring more force than other chakra manipulations, mastering her lightning chakra required concentration to execute the techniques without shocking the user. Hinata had been shocking herself more often than not in the beginning, so this was easier said than done. Even though she still slipped sometimes, she was able to execute C-ranked lightning techniques with little difficulty because she had superior chakra control compared to most of her peers. At the moment, Tsunade was doing another examination on Hinata. She wasn't physically ill, but Tsunade was primarily interested in tracking Hinata's lineage. Tsunade thought it would be best for her to be the one to visit the former Hyuga because Hinata was the only one with the guardian's wings. She declared the young lady healthy and proceeded to speak with Naruto. Hinata had fallen asleep after learning to control her lightning chakra and had asked Kakashi for help because he was one of the few ninja in the village who had a lightning affinity. Tsunade had to give Naruto a worried glance when she noticed her favorite blonde patiently waiting for her to tell him about Hinata. Since Naruto had been a part of this entire situation from the start, she was, quite honestly, extremely proud of the way he handled himself. Nevertheless, Naruto was dealing with his fair share of issues. Naruto had started to return to semi-active duty now that Hinata was more capable of managing herself. He was even more irritated by his teammates' continued refusal to even consider apologizing to Hinata. And Kakashi had been hesitant to permit his team to do anything that would require them to leave the village. His justification was that their teamwork was far too inconsistent. She couldn't recall the last time Naruto had spent time with any of his friends, aside from a few closely watched training sessions or without Hinata by his side, so it wasn't just his work that suffered. Tsunade needed to connect with some of his male colleagues, but he understood that Naruto was only watching out for his friend. It would at least allow him to spend a few hours doing what he wanted rather than what he felt compelled to do for the sake of the guys. Tsunade had gone behind his back and instructed Shikamaru, Choji, and Kiba to meet Naruto for lunch at Ichiraku Ramen. The only thing left to do was to get him out of the house. Tsunade chose to sit across from Naruto, who was presently consuming an instant bowl of ramen, and confront him. Well, Gaki, she is perfectly fine. She doesn't seem to have any lasting issues from working with her lightning chakra, and she will just need a little sleep for the rest of the day. That's good to know. Ba-chan, for a second there, I thought she might have done too much too soon. I wouldn't worry too much. Naruto Hinata-san is a big girl, she can take care of herself. After saying, I know that, but still, Naruto fell silent. Even though he was sure Hinata could care for herself, he couldn't help but worry. Tsunade let out a sigh. Naruto, I know you are worried about leaving Hinata alone, but she is more than capable of defending herself. Her elemental training is progressing nicely. She is a practitioner of the basics of Juken. and she can escape from anyone by simply flying away if need be. Her former clan has not shown any visible signs of retaliation, and I doubt they will try anything in broad daylight. But what if someone catches her off guard, or tries to hurt her while I'm gone? What if she gets hurt while I'm gone? I can't just leave her here by herself. What if? Finally, Tsunade's voice called out to Naruto, "Naruto." And he broke his line of inquiry. She went on when he indicated that he would allow her to speak. "Naruto. She can take care of herself. She may be precious to you, but she is not the only one I am worried about. You have barely had any time to yourself since this whole mess started, and I know from experience how being isolated from the rest of your social circle is not good for you in the long run. You need to be able to spend time with people other than Hinata." "But what can I do, Ba-chan? Who knows who would take advantage of me being outside the apartment without her being with me? I can't just leave her alone. I refuse." "Why not just use your shadow clones then? They could do the same thing." "They can." Tsunade was taken aback by this straightforward inquiry. Naruto couldn't have been that stupid to see the full advantages of his clones, could he? But then again, this was Naruto. She told herself he most likely never took the time to truly understand what his clones were capable of because of the way he tossed them around during battles. Furthermore, if either of his sensei had actually pointed it out to him, his training would have proceeded much more quickly. Naruto shook his head negatively. "You mean to tell me that you never realized what your clones could do, Naruto? Okay. How to put this simply for you to understand, your clones give you their memories when they dispel, so whatever they know, you learn. For example, if you were to make a few clones and leave them here, they could keep track of Hinata-san for you, and if anything happens to her, they could dispel and let you know. I'm amazed you haven't figured that out." "Well, I guess that would explain why it always feels like I'm watching a fight from so many different angles. I guess I just ignored it after a while." "You baka. Well, in any case, just for today, make a few clones and go spend some time around the village. I already told some of your friends to meet you at Ichiraku Ramen for a meal later this afternoon, so just go enjoy yourself." Naruto reluctantly said, "I guess that will be alright. Okay Ba-chan, I'll go out and hang around town today. It would be good to see some of his other friends for something other than training." But he still didn't like the thought. Who knows? Perhaps Hinata would manage without him for a day. He made a dozen clones and gave them instructions to protect Hinata today. While he spent some time in the village, he never saw the main house Hyuga walking in the opposite direction, just out of the normal human line of sight, and neither did Tsunade. For several hours, Naruto wandered the village, stopping occasionally to greet a few locals, shinobi, and kunoichi he recognized, such as Konohamaru, whom Naruto had not seen in a long time, and Izumo Kamizuki and Katetsu Higane, who were for once off guard duty. For the most part, Naruto just wandered around. Naruto started to realize how much his life had changed since he became a ninja without his link to his team. He could recall being ignored by everyone as he walked around the village during these periods. This was gradually changing, though, as more and more people began to view him as a human being rather than disregarding him or considering him to be the Kyuubi. Although he was still far from being accepted by the majority, he had made some real friends, embarked on some incredible adventures, battled against insurmountable odds, suffered tragedies, and had started to appreciate life to the fullest. Naruto felt sentimental because he felt like his life was progressing. The sight of Shikamaru, Choji, and Kiba outside the Ichiraku ramen stand jolted Naruto out of his reverie. Kiba was attempting to stop Akamaru from running behind the counter. Shikamaru appeared to have just crawled out of bed, which was obviously familiar to him, and Choji appeared to be as hungry as usual. The three genin were the closest individuals Naruto could regard as his best guy friends. Having known each other since their time at the academy, Sasuke would have received that, but that was out of the question because they were not on the best of terms at the moment. Naruto yelled, "Hey, guys!" in his characteristically loud and raucous voice. Clearly, some things just changed slower than others. The blonde, wearing orange, was running to the stand when the three of them turned around. They all greeted him in their typical ways. Choji shook hands, Shikamaru waved his hand languidly, as though the act of greeting was putting him to sleep, and Kiba joked that the dobi was finally arriving, much to the annoyance of the blonde. Following the meet and greet, everyone took a seat and started placing their food orders. Shikamaru ordered a small vegetable ramen, Choji ordered beef, Kiba ordered a medium pork ramen and a piece of beef for Akamaru, and Naruto ordered the Ichiraku special, which is basically a miso ramen with a little bit of everything in it. The group would primarily discuss missions, teammates, and life in general, with the conversations being kept to a minimum. Shikamaru eventually became aware that Naruto appeared preoccupied. "Hey, Naruto, what's up?" Naruto tried to look foolish as he looked up from his third bowl of ramen, but Shikamaru did not buy that look for a second. "Don't give me that. You have barely eaten any ramen today. Which is odd even for you. You look like a man worried about something. Care to explain? Naruto sighed and set down his chopsticks. Well, I'm worried about Hinata-chan. I know she has been fine for a while now. Heck, if she wanted to, she probably could move out of my apartment and into Kurenai-sensei's place, but I keep on having this feeling that something bad is gonna happen. I don't know. I'm just worried. I just get scared thinking about what could happen to her. After a brief digression, Naruto became aware of the glances he was receiving from Choji, Shikamaru, and Kiba. He couldn't understand why, but it seemed like they were expecting him to say all of this. What? All three simply exchanged glances and smiled. You're in love. With that statement, Naruto almost choked on the ramen broth that was leaking out of his nose. What? That's crazy. You guys are crazy. Kiba shot back. Are we? Face it, dude, you've got it bad. No, I don't. Is that right? Why don't we test that little theory, huh? Let's see. Do you think she is cute? Replied Kiba. Well, yeah, but Choji inquired. Do you care about her? Sure, but would you do anything to make sure she was safe? Would you be angry if someone hurt her? Would you cry if she left you? Do you have troubles thinking of anything else but her? Would you do all of that cliché crap that you see done in the movies just to make her happy? Shikamaru asked knowingly. In defeat, Naruto hung his head. Yeah. You can't deny it, man, Kiba replied, laughing at Naruto's lack of understanding. Then you're in love. Naruto considered that to tell the truth, he was unaware that he was falling for Hinata. He believed that he simply viewed her as a close friend, possibly his closest companion. Having grown up by himself, he didn't quite know what a love between a man and woman was supposed to look like, basically just having to see the occasional couple holding hands and occasionally kissing. Furthermore, with those girls constantly praising Sasuke, his small fan club didn't exactly offer any positive models of what love should look like. How could he have known that blushing and finding it difficult to communicate with the person you were in love with were indicators of? Naruto's head thudded against the counter. He really was a fool. The way Hinata had occasionally behaved around him suddenly made a great deal more sense. She blushed, stuttered, and fainted because she was shy and liked him. How could he have missed the similarities? It shouldn't have been that hard because Sakura occasionally behaved in the same manner around Sasuke. He felt foolish, man. Shikamaru inquired, had an epiphany, ramen for brains? Shut up, Shikamaru. Not everyone had the privilege of having people teach them about this stuff, Naruto replied. Yeah, but it was pretty obvious, Naruto. Most people could tell just looking at her how she felt. Thanks for pointing that out, Choji-man. I feel stupid now. Well, I guess when I get back, I can. Naruto was about to say something, but his expression changed to one of shock and concern, and he quickly fled the stand after exchanging glances. Choji, Kiba, and Shikamaru paid for their food and fled after Naruto. Akamaru following closely behind. The first person to catch up to Naruto was the Nara. Hey, what the hell was that about, Naruto? You look like you just found out that you were allergic to ramen broth. Naruto didn't even look back to answer. The clones that I had watching Hinata-chan started dispelling someone as attacking her. Instead of wondering how Naruto's clones were able to accomplish that, the two Genin and one Chunin just started to run faster in the direction of Naruto's apartment in the hopes of reaching Hinata before something happened to her while traveling. Naruto was only thinking about one thing. Wait a moment. Hinata-chan, I can't let you go now that I've discovered how I feel. Looking for something to do, Hanabi wandered around the Hyuga compound. Hanabi had been idle ever since her sister had been exiled from the clan. She had finished her training for the day and had no true friends her own age with whom to play. When she heard her father speaking to Yui and Miki, two elders of the Hyuga clan, she halted her journey to her father's office. Hiashi-sama, this has gone on far enough. That child has been among the living for too long. Her existence is a liability. I know, Miki-san, I have been waiting for the right opportunity to do so, but that damn Hokage has had the building she is staying in under surveillance. Well, that won't be an issue now. One of the branch members walked by the complex and saw that the only thing protecting that wretch Hinata are a few clones of that blonde brat. We can sweep in while the security is lax, Yui said. Hiashi seemed to ponder, then nodded in agreement. Very well, I have grown tired of this farce. The sooner she is eliminated, the sooner her stain on humanity is cleansed. In the worst case scenario, we lose one more member of the clan for the sake of a mission. Hanabi had to stop a startled gasp. She was aware of her father's lack of enthusiasm for Hinata, but to really plan her murder? But it was the next statement that nearly brought Hanabi to tears of fear. What of your other daughter, Hanabi? She was born from the same wretch that bore your abomination of a firstborn. She also could have the essence of that cursed bloodline, Yui replied. Hanabi nearly burst into tears. She was unaware of any additional inheritances from her deceased mother. Although Hanabi had always been told she was superior to her sister, She had never been informed that she could experience another Kekkei Genkai. She prayed that her father would not give the idea of killing her any serious thought. She was his daughter, after all. Yui was right. Even though Hiashi didn't want to acknowledge it, no matter how much he wanted to acknowledge it, the risk was just too great to take, even though he loved his daughter. Very well, as much as it pains me. Her death will ensure the security of this clan. Worry not. Come tomorrow morning, we will have tied up all of our loose ends. Our clan will no longer be tarnished with half-breed trash. Hanabi had not bothered to listen to what Hiashi had to say. Her own father wanted her dead, so she was afraid. Now she was perplexed because she didn't see anything that would have suggested she had any other ancestries. Since she was at a loss for what to do, she turned to her half-brother Neji, the only person she knew who could offer her any guidance at this time. She rushed to embrace Neji as soon as she saw him in his room. Sobbing into his uniform, Neji went to ask her what was going on after being taken aback by her unexpected arrival. Neji ni-san, it's horrible. I just heard Tu-san say that he is going to kill me and Hinata ne-chan. He said it was because we have some other bloodline other than the Byakugan. I'm scared. Neji was stunned. If his uncle was going to destroy his own blood, Hanabi and Hinata, how far gone was he? And for what, given that one had the potential for a new Kekkei Genkai while the other already had one? Neji realized immediately that he needed to leave the clan. He could request clan emancipation documents for himself from the Hokage because he was a ninja. He was hoping Tsunade-sama could assist her. All he needed to do now was escape with Hanabi before his uncle arrived to murder her. He started talking again after she had calmed down. Hanabi-sama, I need you to calm down and listen to me. I won't let Hiashi-sama harm you. It is my duty to make sure to protect the heir of the main branch, even if it is from internal forces. Here's what we will do. I will go and pack my things. My teammate showed me how to use sealing techniques to store my things. Once I am done in here, I will get into your room, we will pack your things, and then we will make a run for the Hokage Tower. Once in there, we can see if Tsunade-sama will be able to help the two of us out. I am sure she won't let him hurt you. Hanabi-sama, now, go quickly and gather what you need. I will be there shortly. After nodding and giving her half-brother another hug, Hanabi went to collect her belongings. In just 10 minutes, Neji had his belongings organized and ready to go. Using a pack and multiple scrolls, he then sealed Hanabi's belongings into individual scrolls. Leaving her room empty, the door of Hanabi's room opened and a knock was heard just as the two Hyuga children were about to depart. Hiashi entered with Yui and Miki at his sides and said, Hanabi, I must speak with you at once. When he noticed that Neji was carrying a backpack and that Hanabi's room was empty, he scowled. What is the meaning of this? Neji was aware of his predicament. All it would take to ruin his plan would be a single hand signal. He produced a number of smoke and flash bombs, tossed them, and seized Hanabi. In a desperate and resourceful move, he fled the room through the open window and ran out of the compound. Hiashi became enraged after the smoke subsided and the flash faded. His own nephew had stolen his youngest daughter and was now attempting to flee to the Hokage Tower. He looked at the two elderly men. Yui-sama, Miki-sama, sound the alarm. Neji has just kidnapped Hanabi and is now en route to the Hokage. If he makes it, our plans will be all for naught. Neji, Hinata, and Hanabi must not survive the night. In an attempt to avoid further upsetting Hiashi, the elders went off to collect some of their devoted supporters. Hiashi turned to face the window that was open. He wasn't happy. I've put in too much effort for this plan to fail now. People like them won't stop me from pursuing my dream. It will end one way or another, I swear to you.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.